The wind screams across the endless white, a soundless howl when you're looking at it from above, but on the ground it's a cutting blade. Antarctica stretches out in every direction, a place that almost seems to reject the idea of life. To most of the world, this is the final wilderness, a place of pure nature, untouched by human hands, except for a few research stations clinging to its edges. In photographs, it looks sterile, majestic, and entirely empty. The official story frames it as a frozen desert, with no history, no ancient ruins, no buried secrets. It is a continent presented to us as an open book, but one with almost no words written on its pages. And yet, for all its blankness, there's something about Antarctica that has always drawn whispers. Sailors' journals from centuries past speak of strange lights flickering on the horizon and of waters steaming in the dead of polar winter. Modern explorers talk of instruments malfunctioning for no reason, and of compasses spinning wildly in places where magnetic maps say they shouldn't. Official records reduce these stories to atmospheric effects, hardware faults, or fatigue-induced hallucinations. But the pattern is older than the scientific age, stretching back into the realm of myth and rumor. Seen from orbit, Antarctica is a single solid mass, a fortress of ice, a mile thick in places, sealed tight over rock and mountain ranges. But satellites have also captured things that shouldn't be there: faint geometric lines, unexplainable heat signatures, and smooth, unnatural shapes buried far below the surface. Governments wave these anomalies away as image artifacts or quirks of radar data. Still, the raw, unedited files, leaked by insiders over the decades, tell a different story, one of structures too regular, too precise to be products of ice and stone alone. This is the paradox of Antarctica. The world believes it to be lifeless, yet some of the most tightly controlled scientific zones on Earth are here. Guarded by layers of international regulation, the Antarctic Treaty, in place since 1961, is often celebrated as a symbol of peace and cooperation, a continent without war or border. But buried inside that treaty are vague clauses about non-disclosure of certain discoveries and non-interference with sites of unspecified significance. To the public, these are legal safeguards for environmental protection. To those who've studied the fine print, they feel more like locks on a door. The human imagination is drawn to what it cannot see, and in Antarctica, seeing is rare. Most of the interior has never been crossed on foot. Flights that stray too far from approved paths have been quietly intercepted and turned away. Research teams work under strict clearance, and even then their data often passes through multiple review boards before being released. The world is told this is simply to ensure accuracy. Yet when researchers themselves describe redacted findings or classified locations in hushed, careful terms, it's hard to believe the only reason is scientific caution. For the past century, each new era of exploration has added a new layer to the mystery. The earliest expeditions came home with tales of mountains that vanished into clouds, and valleys that seemed warm enough for open streams to run. Later, during the Cold War, military patrols stationed near the coast reported unidentified craft moving under the ice, too fast and too deliberate to be chunks of glacier. Today, satellite networks keep constant watch, and still occasionally they blink out over certain coordinates, as if something below has the power to turn eyes in the sky blind. What lies beneath all this secrecy? The known narrative gives us glaciers, penguins, and sterile frozen rock. The hidden narrative, the one pieced together from stray reports, leaked cables, and stories smuggled out of research bases, suggests that Antarctica is not entirely frozen in time. There are pockets of heat, caverns lit by their own bioluminescent life, and perhaps even places where something older than humanity still waits. We often think of Earth's great secrets as belonging to the deep ocean or outer space. But here, on our own planet's southernmost edge, there is a silence far older and far more deliberate. The ice here, is not just a blanket laid by nature. It is a lock, and perhaps even a warning. In the quiet between wind gusts, when the cold stills the breath in your throat, you can almost imagine something vast and patient listening from below. Every great mystery begins with a simple image, a grainy photograph, a strange reading, a fleeting glimpse that doesn't fit. For Antarctica, the image is of a place too empty to be empty. Scientists tell us life here survives only at the molecular scale, in tiny frozen bacteria. Yet there are those who have walked the ice and felt watched, those who have entered its caves and returned with stories they can't quite tell in public. It's easy to dismiss such tales when they come from a single voice. It's harder when the voices come from different decades, different nations, all describing the same strange sense that the ground beneath them was hollow. The cinematic sweep of snow and sky hides a world of shadows, somewhere far below, in darkness untouched by sun for millions of years. There may be entire landscapes, rivers of liquid water, and structures too old for any known culture. These possibilities do not appear in tourist brochures or school textbooks. They live instead in restricted files, in sealed reports stamped with dates that go back further than some countries have existed. The official picture of Antarctica is clean, cold, and simple. The hidden picture is layered, warm in places where warmth should not exist, and threaded with signs of intention, as if someone or something once built here, and then buried their work under ice, thick enough to outlast empire. The first step in this journey is to recognize that the white silence is not empty. It is full of questions, full of contradictions, full of histories that have been frozen, not by accident, but by design. The edge of the world is not a blank, it is a veil, and like all veils, it hides as much as it reveals. As we take our first steps into this story, remember, what you've been told about Antarctica is not false, but it is incomplete. What you see on the surface is only the beginning. What waits below will challenge not just the history of this continent, but the history of the human race itself. Before Antarctica was a white void at the bottom of our maps, it was an idea. Ancient philosophers believed there must be a great southern land to balance the continents of the north, a symmetry demanded by logic rather than proof. The Greeks called it terra australis incognita, the unknown southern land, and medieval cartographers drew it as a vast green temperate paradise. These depictions, dismissed by modern scholars as speculative art, may hold a sliver of something more troubling, details too specific, too aligned with what we now know of Antarctica's shape to be mere coincidence. In 1513, the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis created a map unlike any of its time. Among its coastal outlines is a southern landmass, startlingly similar to the Antarctic Peninsula, drawn not as an icebound wasteland, but as a coastline free of glaciers with bays and rivers. Official explanations argue that Piri Reis merely copied from older inaccurate charts, and that any resemblance to Antarctica is a fluke. Yet geological studies suggest that the Antarctic coast beneath the ice would in fact look strikingly similar to what appears on his parchment. This raises an uncomfortable question: who could have mapped it before the ice locked it away? Mainstream history tells us that humans have never inhabited Antarctica. The ice sheet covering the continent is said to be millions of years old, predating our species by eons. But if that is the case, how did ancient mapmakers draw its ice-free form? Some researchers speculate about lost civilizations with seafaring capabilities, far beyond what we credit to antiquity. Others propose that humanity's story has been reset more than once, that we are not the first intelligent species to rise and fall on this planet. Such ideas are easily dismissed in lecture halls, yet they persist in the margins of academic discourse like stubborn stains that cannot be scrubbed away. Even when we move forward in time to the age of discovery, contradictions emerge. Early explorers reported sightings of icebergs and icy shores at latitudes where they should not have been, as if the ice extended further north in some eras and receded in others. James Cook, during his voyages in the 1770s, spoke of an ice wall so immense it seemed like the edge of the world. Yet between these observations lie gaps, voyages that claim to have reached more temperate coasts, descriptions of wildlife and vegetation impossible in today's polar conditions. These accounts are officially treated as navigational errors or fanciful exaggerations, but when cross-referenced with one another, they begin to form a quiet pattern. In the archives of South American and Polynesian oral traditions, fragments of memory surface, legends of journeys to a southern land rich in resources, where the days grew impossibly long. The Maori speak of voyages led by ancestors to a far southern place, though the details are wrapped in metaphor. The Mapuche of Chile tell of a realm beyond the storms, inhabited by beings older than the sun's path. Scholars interpret these as symbolic or as echoes of migrations to sub-Antarctic islands, yet their persistence across cultures hints that these stories may be more than allegory. It is tempting to believe that the Antarctica we know, the frozen, uninhabitable wasteland, has always been as it is now, but ice is not permanent. Geological records show that in certain epochs the continent was lush and green, with forests of beech and ferns teeming with life. The official timeline places the last of these warm periods tens of millions of years ago, before humans existed, and yet here are maps and myths that seem to remember it. Could there have been a more recent thaw, a brief interlude in which the ice retreated enough to reveal the land beneath? If so, what or who might have taken advantage of it? The more one studies these early depictions, the harder it becomes to ignore their precision. The Piri Reis map is not the only example. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 shows a southern continent, remarkably close in shape to modern Antarctica, complete with mountain ranges in approximately the right places. Again, these features appear without the thick ice cover known today. The mainstream explanation holds that these cartographers were simply extrapolating based on other continents, or were influenced by wishful thinking. But what if they were drawing from records we no longer possess, records handed down from a time when Antarctica was not hidden beneath its frozen armor? The silence of the official narrative on this matter is telling. Historical cartography is a well-studied field, yet when these anomalous maps surface, they are treated with polite dismissal, as though their implications are too disruptive to explore openly. It's easier to label them curiosities than to ask how they came to be. But if they are accurate in any measure, they suggest that humanity's reach or the reach of some predecessor extended into regions we've only just begun to explore with modern technology. Even in the 19th century, when the first confirmed sightings of the Antarctic continent occurred, there were rumors that some expeditions were retracing routes already known to secretive parties. The discovery in 1820 by Russian, British, and American crews is celebrated as a triumph of exploration, yet behind the scenes there are hints that certain features of the coast were already charted in private naval archives. How those charts came to exist is a question rarely raised in public forums. The contrast between the accepted record and the hidden possibilities could not be sharper. Officially, Antarctica entered human awareness in the 19th century and has remained a place of pure science ever since. But the weight of anomalies, the ancient maps, the legends, the unexplained navigational logs, suggests a much older human connection, one that predates not only modern nations but perhaps even our current understanding of civilization's age. If these connections are real, they open the door to deeper, more troubling inquiries. Who first saw Antarctica's green coasts? What forces buried their presence beneath the ice and erased their history from the surface world? And perhaps most importantly, if something was lost there once, could it still be waiting beneath the ice, preserved in ways that defy time itself? The public image of Antarctica as a blank, lifeless continent is the product of centuries of selective memory. But when you look at the fragments left behind, the maps, the myths, the stray accounts that don't quite fit, they align into the faint outline of another story, one in which the ice is not the beginning but the final chapter of something far older. That faint outline is what will lead us deeper into this mystery, from the surface myths into the ice's own hidden memory. Ice is supposed to be a record keeper. Every snowfall, every dust storm, every shift in the atmosphere leaves its mark in frozen layers, stacking year upon year until the ice becomes a library of time. Scientists drill deep cores into the Antarctic sheet, extracting cylinders of frozen history that stretch back hundreds of thousands of years. These cores tell us when volcanoes erupted, when deserts bloomed, when the air was thick with greenhouse gases. The official story is that these frozen archives are precise, objective, and untouched by any hand but nature. Yet within those cores there are moments that do not fit, sudden chemical shifts, strange particulate layers, and heat signatures that appear and vanish like whispers in a book someone has tried to edit. Mainstream glaciology explains these anomalies as natural events, brief volcanic warmings, meteor impacts, or oceanic shifts. But some researchers, speaking off the record, describe patterns too regular, too localized, to be the work of blind geological forces. They speak of rapid melting episodes recorded deep below the current surface, where the ice shows signs of having been liquid, not slowly over centuries, but suddenly, almost violently, in the span of years. In a continent said to be untouched by human hands until modern times, such heat events raise the question, what could generate enough energy to change the ice so abruptly? One of the most striking cases comes from a core drilled near the Gamburtsev Mountains, a hidden range buried beneath more than 2 miles of ice. At a certain depth, the temperature readings abruptly spike, accompanied by a layer rich in fine metallic particles. The official explanation, volcanic activity, doesn't quite hold up, because there is no known volcanic system in the area. And yet, the particles resemble industrial byproducts, microscopic spheres of metal that in other contexts would suggest high-temperature manufacturing. No peer-reviewed paper makes such a claim outright. The implications are too disruptive. Instead, the findings are quietly filed under unresolved anomalies and left to gather dust. These sudden melt layers are not confined to one location. In the cores from near Lake Vostok, thousands of miles from the Gamburtsev site, there are similar unexplained spikes. The ice here, sealed from the atmosphere for millions of years, should be a perfect record of climate stability. Yet it contains evidence of abrupt warming periods, each followed by rapid refreezing, as if something beneath had flared to life and then gone dark again. The frequency of these events is irregular, but enough to form a haunting pattern: bursts of heat, silence, bursts of heat again. To the public, climate is a slow, predictable force. Ice moves at a glacial pace, the very metaphor for slowness. But in these hidden layers, the ice is not slow, it is reactive. It records events that seem deliberate, almost mechanical in timing. If the heat came from beneath, it could point to geothermal activity, or to something harnessing that heat for a purpose. This is the fork in the narrative. One path leads to natural science, the other to the possibility of an ancient intelligent presence with the capability to manipulate its frozen environment. Not all anomalies are thermal. Some cores contain isotopic ratios that defy expected patterns, suggesting the sudden release of massive amounts of fresh water into the ocean. These events appear to have happened in times when Antarctica was supposedly locked in deep freeze. Official models strain to explain them as collapses of ice shelves, triggered by distant tectonic shifts. But to those who have seen the raw numbers, it feels more like the opening and closing of vast hidden reservoirs, movements too precise to be accidents. In rare cases, seismic sensors have recorded tremors deep within the ice sheet that precede these strange melt signatures. The tremors are low frequency, unlike typical earthquakes, and some exhibit a rhythmic pulsing. This has led to hushed speculation among certain researchers that the ice may be reacting to something moving far beneath it, something large enough to create its own microclimate. In open conferences, such ideas are avoided. In private conversations, they are almost impossible to ignore. What makes these anomalies more unsettling is the pattern of how they are handled. Research stations that encounter them often report technical issues in their public logs, followed by gaps in the data record. In some cases, core samples that might contain the most unusual findings have gone missing in transit between Antarctic bases and mainland laboratories. Officially, these losses are blamed on shipping errors or equipment failure. Unofficially, some scientists believe certain layers are being deliberately removed before they can be analyzed by independent teams. We are told that the Antarctic ice has been in place for millions of years, a static frozen monument to Earth's past. But the cores tell another story of a continent that has been active, shifting, and in some ways alive. In this hidden record, ice does not merely accumulate, it responds, it melts, it refreezes, and in doing so it hides traces of events we do not fully understand. If the warming episodes are natural, then Antarctica may be home to powerful geothermal systems, unlike any yet mapped, capable of melting vast sections of ice in a matter of years. But if they are not natural, if they are the product of intention, then we must ask who or what could survive beneath that much ice, generating that much heat, in complete secrecy. This is the place where the accepted history runs out, and the hidden history begins to assert itself. The ice is more than a record, it is a witness. Every strange layer, every anomaly, is a fragment of testimony. The question is whether we are willing to read it honestly, or whether we will continue to treat its strangest pages as errors to be ignored. In the official narrative, these oddities are footnotes, distractions from the grand story of Earth's climate. In the hidden narrative, they are the central thread, leading downward into a world no one is supposed to know exists. As the cores are stored away in refrigerated vaults, thousands of miles from the continent, their secrets remain locked to the public. But for those who have held them in their hands, run their fingers over the transitions from crystal clear ice to cloudy heat-warped layers, the impression is inescapable: something has happened here before. The ice is not innocent, it remembers, and what it remembers may be the key to understanding why Antarctica has always been more than just ice and rock, why it may in fact be the oldest and most carefully guarded mystery on Earth. From the air, Antarctica's dry valleys look like a flaw in the ice, a wound in the white where the snow has been scraped away to reveal bare, wind-scoured earth. They stretch for miles, surrounded by mountains, yet their floors are almost entirely free of snow, even in the depths of winter. Official science explains them as a product of katabatic winds, those fierce ice-dry currents that pour down from the plateau at hurricane force, stripping away any trace of moisture. And yet, for all their acknowledged strangeness, the official record treats the dry valleys as little more than geological curiosities, barren places where nothing but dust and rock can survive. Step onto that parched ground, however, and the story begins to shift. Here, in one of the harshest environments on Earth, researchers have found faint green smudges clinging to the undersides of rocks, microbial colonies that somehow thrive in sub-zero temperatures and near total dryness. These extremophiles are celebrated in scientific literature as evidence that life can endure in places we once thought impossible. But their presence raises another question, one that doesn't often make it into published paper. If life can survive here, in the most exposed and hostile region of Antarctica, what might it be capable of in the far more sheltered realms beneath the ice? The valleys are also home to anomalies less easily explained. Certain mineral formations, discovered in shaded crevices, appear to have been shaped not by erosion but by a process of deposition, as though liquid once flowed here, leaving behind intricate, almost architectural patterns. Officially, These are dismissed as rare combinations of wind and mineral dust. Yet some geologists, who have studied them privately, admit they resemble formations created by slow-moving water rich in dissolved compounds, something the dry valleys are not supposed to have seen in tens of thousands of years. Then there is the phenomenon of the blood falls, a rust-red cascade that seeps from the mouth of Taylor Glacier into Lake Bonny. The striking color is caused by iron-rich brine, sealed off from the atmosphere for perhaps 1 million years, welling up from a hidden source deep within the glacier. Scientists marvel at the ancient microbial life found in the brine, which survives without sunlight, feeding on sulfur and iron. The official takeaway is that these organisms are a model for how life might exist on icy moons like Europa. But for those reading between the lines, blood falls are proof of something more immediate. There are reservoirs of liquid water deep beneath the ice, connected by channels we do not fully understand, and they are not sterile. The presence of these subglacial fluids links the dry valleys to an even deeper mystery. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed hints of vast, dark voids beneath the surrounding glacier, pockets of space large enough to hold entire lakes, or perhaps even cavern systems. Official reports say these are likely caused by geothermal heating or ancient meltwater pockets, sealed away by the advancing ice. But the shapes of some of these voids are disquieting: long straight walls, abrupt right angles, and smooth domes that suggest a geometry uncommon in nature. Data from these surveys is rarely released in full, and in some cases, the coordinates of certain anomalies are quietly classified. It is here, in these valleys, that a subtle boundary between the official and the hidden seems to blur. Scientists are permitted to study the microbial colonies and the iron brines, to write about them in journals, and to share their findings with the public. But when it comes to exploring the deeper anomalies, the voids, the geometric formations, the possibility that the valleys may connect to a larger underground network, funding dries up, permissions stall, and research teams are abruptly reassigned. The narrative shifts back to safe ground. This is a unique desert, fascinating in its own right, but ultimately empty. And yet the dry valleys seem anything but empty to those who have spent long seasons here. Veteran researchers tell of hearing strange low-frequency hums on still days, vibrations that seem to come from deep within the earth, rather than from the wind. Instruments have recorded seismic signatures without any clear source, no ice movement, no tectonic activity. On rare occasions, compasses have behaved erratically in specific spots, spinning in slow, lazy circles, as though influenced by a shifting magnetic field. These occurrences are officially written off as equipment glitches, but they tend to recur in the same few locations, over and over. There are also the stories, never part of the scientific literature, but persistent in the oral history of those who've wintered here. Stories of light seen flickering along the valley floor, moving in ways that suggest neither atmospheric reflection nor human activity. Stories of narrow fissures that seem to exhale warm, damp air, carrying with it the faint scent of something organic. Stories of researchers who returned from solo excursions with a deep, unshakable sense that they had been watched. In the public record, these tales are chalked up to isolation and stress. Privately, some say they feel like pieces of a larger puzzle, fragments pointing toward the existence of a hidden system beneath the visible landscape. If the dry valleys are, as official science tells us, simply the product of unique weather patterns and ancient glacial activity, then they are still remarkable, a reminder of nature's ability to defy expectations. But if the hidden narrative is true, then these valleys are more than geological oddities. They are access points, windows into a much larger concealed environment beneath the ice. An environment that is warm in places, that holds liquid water, that supports life in forms we are only beginning to comprehend. In this interpretation, the dry valleys are not barren at all, but the exposed edges of something far greater. The tips of frozen fingers reaching up from a subterranean body. The microbial life we see here would be only the scouts, the survivors pushed to the margins by whatever dominates the hidden depths. The mineral formations could be remnants of ancient outflows, perhaps even artifacts of long-vanished engineering. And the blood falls, rather than a mere curiosity, could be the slow leak of a sealed world, hinting at vast reserves of brine and biology waiting below. The contrast is stark. On one side, a scientific marvel neatly contained within natural explanations; on the other, a doorway into a concealed realm that might hold the remnants or descendants of something ancient, intelligent, and still active. For now the official story prevails. The valleys remain labeled as deserts, their anomalies catalogued but never connected into a narrative that might threaten the accepted image of Antarctica. But for those who have seen the dry valleys with their own eyes, the sense lingers that this place is not merely a gap in the ice, but a gap in our understanding, one that leads downward into a darkness far older and far stranger than we dare imagine. In the winter of 1946, a U.S. naval fleet of unprecedented size left port under the command of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Officially, the mission was known as Operation High Jump, a post-war training exercise designed to prepare personnel for polar conditions, test equipment, and map uncharted stretches of Antarctica. Public statements emphasized its peaceful scientific purpose, but behind the press releases, the operation's scale told a different story. This was no small research mission. The fleet included 13 ships, over 4,700 men, and enough firepower to conduct a small-scale invasion. The question that has lingered ever since: invasion of what? The official timeline says the mission was scheduled for 6 months, yet it was abruptly terminated after only 8 weeks. The Navy attributed the early end to poor weather and logistical difficulties. But weather in Antarctica is hardly unpredictable, certainly not to Admiral Byrd, a veteran of multiple polar expeditions. Nor could logistical difficulties fully explain the hurried departure, the sealed reports, or the rumors that began filtering out almost immediately after the fleet returned. According to the public record, High Jump's purpose was threefold: to train personnel in extreme cold, to consolidate U.S. claims in Antarctica, and to conduct aerial mapping. Yet within months, fragments of testimony from participating sailors and pilots began to surface, accounts that suggested the fleet had encountered something wholly unexpected. One such account came from a naval aviator who later spoke in confidence to a South American journalist, claiming that aircraft had been engaged by unidentified flying objects, machines far faster and more maneuverable than anything the Navy possessed. His story, like others, was officially dismissed as fantasy or misremembering, but the consistency among these whispers, the same descriptions of metallic disks, sudden appearances and disappearances, and erratic movements, was difficult to ignore. Admiral Byrd himself added fuel to the fire. On his way back from Antarctica, he gave an interview to a Chilean newspaper in which he was quoted as warning of a potential threat from flying objects that could travel from pole to pole at incredible speeds. In the United States, the quote was largely ignored or quietly omitted from mainstream coverage. In later retellings, some claimed Byrd had been misquoted, others suggested the statement had been taken out of context, yet the phrasing matched too closely the rumors coming from his own men to be easily dismissed. The official history books note that High Jump gathered valuable photographic data and made advancements in cold weather logistics, but what they omit is just as telling. Portions of the mission's aerial mapping remain classified to this day, more than 70 years later. Some researchers believe those withheld photographs show features that do not align with the empty continent narrative, perhaps structures, perhaps entrances to subglacial caverns. If true, this could explain the speed with which the operation was cut short, discovery followed by orders to disengage and suppress. Complicating the picture are the scattered but persistent stories of encounters on the ice itself. A few crew members speaking decades later claimed to have seen lights beneath the surface moving as though following the ships from below. Others described strange magnetic fluctuations that interfered with communications and navigation systems, forcing abrupt course changes. These details, absent from official mission logs, suggest an environment reacting to the fleet's presence, as though something beneath the ice was aware of them. For decades, skeptics have argued that Operation Highjump's mystique is nothing more than Cold War paranoia mixed with post-war fascination with UFOs. They point out that Byrd was a career military man prone to grand statements, and that post-expedition rumors were fueled by magazine writers eager to sell sensational stories. But this explanation struggles to account for the classified photographs, the early withdrawal, and the sheer military scale of the operation far more than was needed for a mapping exercise. If one follows the hidden narrative, Operation Highjump was not merely about training or mapping, it was a reconnaissance in force. In this telling, the U.S. government had received intelligence, possibly from wartime German records, of something in Antarctica worth finding, perhaps even worth seizing. The Nazi connection adds another layer of intrigue. Prior to the end of World War II, Germany had conducted its own Antarctic expedition to a region they named Neuschwabenland. Rumors persist that the Germans had located vast subglacial caverns, and that some of their wartime technology was tested or developed there. If this were true, Highjump may have been a follow-up mission to locate those same sites before another power could. Adding weight to the speculation is the fact that just months after Highjump ended, the early stages of the Antarctic Treaty discussions began, a treaty that, as we will see later, contains curious clauses about restricting certain forms of exploration. The timing is too close for some researchers to dismiss as coincidence. In their view, Highjump's discoveries were the catalyst for a new quiet understanding among major powers that Antarctica held something requiring mutual silence. What exactly that something might be remains the subject of heated debate. Some point to massive geothermal oases hidden beneath the ice, capable of sustaining life. Others claim there are vast ancient structures, perhaps remnants of a civilization far older than humanity. A smaller, more fringe contingent suggests the presence of a still-living society, the same one hinted at in Byrd's alleged warning about flying objects. In each version, Highjump's role was the same: to locate, assess, and decide whether direct engagement was feasible or advisable. The abrupt withdrawal suggests the answer was no. The public was left with the sanitized version, a tale of heroic mapping, harsh weather, and logistical setbacks. The hidden version remained locked in classified archives, hinted at only in the guarded recollections of those who had been there. Whether Byrd's cryptic comments were genuine warnings or misremembered embellishments, they remain a tantalizing loose thread, one that connects the white silence of Antarctica to the broader fabric of post-war secrecy. What lingers most is the contrast between the image we were given and the image implied by the operation's scale and outcome. On paper, Highjump was an exercise in logistics in the shadows. It may have been humanity's first modern contact with something ancient beneath the ice. If so, it would explain why, for the rest of his life, Byrd never again spoke publicly in detail about what he saw there. The true objective of Operation Highjump remains frozen in classified vaults, like the continent itself, but the silence surrounding it, the abrupt retreat, and the fragments of testimony all point toward the same conclusion: something in Antarctica is not meant to be found, or at least not meant to be found yet. And whatever it is, it was significant enough to turn the world's largest polar expedition into one of history's quietest withdrawals. In the decades following Operation Highjump, a troubling pattern began to emerge among those who ventured deep into Antarctica's interior. Officially, the continent is a place of extreme conditions, and accidents are expected: frostbite, hypothermia, falls on hidden crevasses. But whispers circulated among research communities of something far stranger: scientists disappearing without explanation, or returning with stories they could not speak aloud. The public record lists some of these cases as tragic accidents. Behind the scenes, however, colleagues, family members, and classified correspondents tell a more unsettling story, one of sudden vanishings, inexplicable deaths, and silenced inquiries. The first notable cases coincided with the early exploration of subglacial lakes. Lake Vostok, sealed under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, became a focal point for drilling in the 1970s and 1980s. Teams were sent to study the lake's ancient waters, hoping to unlock clues about climate history and potential microbial life. Most of the expeditions went smoothly, yielding invaluable data, yet a few scientists returned visibly changed, unwilling or unable to discuss their findings. Some were reported to have faint burns on their hands, others showed symptoms that defied immediate diagnosis. Medical and scientific reports often cited stress or minor accidents. Privately, colleagues whispered that these were anything but ordinary. Disappearance was more alarming than injury. Several researchers sent to remote sites simply never came back. Search parties often found little more than equipment abandoned in the snow, sometimes with tracks leading in strange directions before abruptly ending. The official narrative framed these as the predictable hazards of polar exploration. Yet the timing and concentration of these incidents fueled speculation. Many of the missing scientists were associated with studies of subglacial lakes, cave systems, or unusual magnetic readings, areas that the public rarely hears about in detail. The pattern is not limited to missing persons. Survivors describe encounters that cannot be explained by natural phenomena alone. One biologist, after returning from a lone expedition into a valley near the Gamburtsev Mountains, reported that her instruments went haywire and she heard low-frequency hums emanating from beneath the ice. She claimed to have seen shadows moving in the darkness, though nothing could have survived in those conditions. By the time she reached base camp, she was found wandering dazed and incoherent, refusing to elaborate on what had happened. In public documents, her incident was attributed to altitude sickness and fatigue. Her personal notes, however, hint at something alive and aware beneath the ice. International collaboration, often hailed as a triumph of science, may have exacerbated the phenomenon. Researchers from different nations who studied sensitive subglacial zones sometimes reported that their findings were intercepted or suppressed by committees, citing environmental protection or national security. Drilling cores were occasionally lost or redirected before full analysis could occur. Laboratories receiving samples from deep beneath the ice were sometimes pressured to destroy or hide results that defied conventional explanations. These disruptions, while framed as bureaucratic necessity, left many scientists frustrated and fearful, as if a silent authority were guarding Antarctica's deeper secrets. The most compelling stories come not from official channels, but from the informal communication networks within the Antarctic research community. Letters, emails, and personal journals, often unpublished, describe incidents too consistent to ignore. They tell of researchers stumbling across perfectly smooth surfaces deep beneath the ice, of unexplained light sources within crevasses, and of instruments reading geometric structures where only rock and ice should exist. Survivors speak of a profound sense of being observed, of entering areas that seemed alive with a consciousness they could not name. There is also a troubling geopolitical dimension. Scientists who cross certain boundaries, whether geographic or topical, often find their careers stalled or their work reassigned. In several reported cases, individuals who attempted to publish anomalies related to subglacial lakes or unexplained magnetic readings were reassigned to non-analytical positions, effectively removing them from the research. The official rationale is always administrative or procedural, but when examined collectively, the pattern suggests a covert effort to suppress access to knowledge about Antarctica's hidden environments. Deaths, too, have a way of repeating certain motifs. Some researchers have fallen into crevasses that appear unnaturally wide and deep. Others have succumbed to sudden, inexplicable hypothermia in areas that should have been mapped and deemed safe. Occasionally, the coroner's reports list causes that are medically plausible, yet narratively awkward: fainting in isolation, heart failure with no prior history, or accidents with equipment that had passed rigorous safety checks. In private discussions, Antarctic veterans admit that these anomalies make them uneasy, a whisper of danger that lies beyond the documented risks of weather and ice. Some accounts even hint at encounters with unknown entities. In one report, a glaciologist working near a hidden subglacial channel described seeing a shape move beneath the ice, luminous and enormous, vanishing before a camera could capture it. He was dismissed by peers as hallucinating due to fatigue and extreme cold. Yet the report survives in personal archives, alongside notes of instruments that recorded heat signatures inconsistent with natural geothermal activity. Whether these sightings are misinterpretations, hallucinations, or evidence of a hidden life form, they contribute to the sense that Antarctica's interior is far from inert. The combination of disappearances, suppression of data, unexplained deaths, and fleeting sightings builds a chilling contrast with the public image of Antarctica as a safe, controlled environment for science. The official narrative reassures us accidents happen, extreme conditions are dangerous, and research continues under strict safety protocols. The hidden narrative suggests something else: that Antarctica guards its deepest layers, that there may be forces, natural or otherwise, capable of influencing, obstructing, or even removing those who venture too far. Perhaps the most unnerving aspect is the silence itself. Scientists who have experienced anomalies are often reluctant to speak, not only because of professional risk, but because of fear. Fear of ridicule, fear of career consequences, and most chillingly, fear of the unknown that lurks beneath the ice. In this climate of silence, the evidence accumulates not in textbooks or journals, but in private conversations, marginal notes, and fleeting anecdotes. It forms a shadowed record, fragmentary but persistent, hinting at a hidden society of phenomena, life, or intelligence that lies beneath the continent's frozen surface. For the casual observer, these disappearances may seem like the inevitable hazards of one of the harshest places on Earth. But when viewed collectively, a pattern emerges: those who probe too deeply, who explore certain hidden regions, often vanish or return transformed, their findings suppressed. The dry valleys, subglacial lakes, and deep ice cores are not merely subjects of academic curiosity, they are the thresholds of an environment that may be actively resisting human intrusion. In Antarctica, the known history, explorers, scientists, and military expeditions is meticulously recorded, catalogued, and celebrated. The hidden history, however, grows in whispers, shadows, and anomalies. It is a story of missing individuals, unexplained phenomena, and subtle but persistent interventions that prevent full disclosure. And in that story, one truth becomes undeniable: the continent is not merely frozen, it is vigilant, secretive, and perhaps aware. Beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice lies one of Antarctica's most enigmatic features, Lake Vostok. To the casual observer, it is merely a body of water sealed off from the surface for millions of years, a hidden lake in a frozen world. Officially, it is celebrated as a scientific marvel, a pristine environment offering a unique window into microbial life and ancient climate. Satellite data and ice cores surrounding the lake provide researchers with a tantalizing glimpse of a completely isolated ecosystem, one that has evolved without sunlight, without human interference, and without the usual biochemical constraints. The official narrative frames it as a laboratory for understanding life under extreme conditions, but Lake Vostok is more than a laboratory. For decades, Russian and international teams have drilled toward its surface, encountering mysterious technical challenges and unexpected phenomena. Drills that should have reached water within predictable parameters frequently stalled, bent, or failed in inexplicable ways. Sensors monitoring the ice above the lake have recorded sudden pulses of movement, low-frequency vibrations, and heat anomalies that cannot be easily explained by natural geothermal activity alone. These data points are cataloged in official logs, but their significance is often downplayed. They are labeled as equipment malfunction, human error, or inconsequential environmental noise. Yet when analyzed collectively, they form a pattern that suggests the lake is not a passive body of water. It is dynamic, reactive, and in some ways almost alive. Perhaps the most unsettling clues come from the chemical composition of the brine and gases trapped in the ice above Vostok. Even before the lake itself was accessed, cores revealed elevated concentrations of methane, ammonia, and other compounds associated with biological activity. In the laboratory, these gases were treated as evidence of extremophile microorganisms surviving in the brine. Yet some scientists privately report ratios and distributions that defy known microbial processes. Certain areas within the lake appear to be chemically distinct, as if separated by barriers or channels, a complexity inconsistent with a simple, isolated aquatic system. Satellite radar imagery adds another layer of intrigue. Subtle depressions and smooth dome-like features on the lake's surface hint at structures beneath the ice. Some of these formations are aligned in geometries rarely produced by natural erosion, straight lines, sharp corners, and repeated patterns that suggest intentional arrangement. Officially, these formations are explained as artifacts of ice flow or subglacial topography, yet independent analysts, comparing repeated scans over years, find anomalies that persist even as the ice above shifts. The implication is unsettling. Beneath the ice may lie not just a lake but a network of submerged formations, perhaps geological, perhaps artificial. Accessing the lake is perilous. Drilling too quickly risks contamination. Drilling too slowly risks refreezing the borehole. The Russian team perfected a method using heated antifreeze, carefully lowering instruments to detect the water before penetration. When the lake was first accessed in the early 2010s, sensors detected an unexpected surge of heat and movement, accompanied by chemical changes that could not be fully explained. The team reported a temporary loss of control over instruments as they entered the water. In public statements, the event was described as minor turbulence caused by pressure differences. In private interviews, participants admitted they had never encountered anything like it, and that some sensors had recorded signals suggesting the presence of large objects moving just beneath the surface. Echoes of these events resonate with stories from other subglacial lakes, Lake Whillans and Lake Mercer, both smaller but equally mysterious, exhibit similar thermal pulses, unexplained currents, and anomalies in magnetic readings. Scientists often attribute these to unknown geothermal processes or previously unobserved hydrodynamics, yet the repetition across multiple locations hints at a more complex reality. Antarctica may be riddled with hidden reservoirs of water and energy, interconnected beneath the ice, interacting in ways that defy simple geological explanation. Speculation naturally follows. Could these lakes, connected by channels or cavities, serve as refuges for life forms unknown to science? Could they be artificial reservoirs created by an advanced ancient civilization, one predating human history as we know it? Or could some combination of geological activity and unknown phenomena produce structures and behaviors so sophisticated that they mimic intelligence? Each hypothesis is contentious, yet each gains traction when placed alongside the persistent anomalies recorded over decades. Public perception, of course, remains grounded in the official version. Lake Vostok is remarkable because it is isolated, pristine, and teeming with simple life. The hidden perception, pieced together from classified logs, leaked communications, and first-hand testimonies, paints a more dramatic picture. In this version, Vostok is a gateway to a larger network beneath the ice, a dynamic system that reacts to intrusion, preserves life in unexpected ways, and may even harbor structures too precise to be purely natural. The contrast is stark. What the world sees as a frozen curiosity is in secret a potential stronghold of Antarctica's deepest mysteries. Adding to the tension are accounts from early reconnaissance missions that skirted the lake's edges. Pilots report that their instruments, radar, magnetic sensors, even basic compasses, behaved erratically over certain coordinates. Some described patches where ice radar returned impossible readings, as though the ice itself were hollow or filled with objects that absorbed energy in unnatural ways. These disturbances were largely ignored in official reports, dismissed as interference from equipment or environmental noise. Yet when viewed alongside the drilling anomalies and thermal pulses, they suggest a coherent, repeating pattern, a hidden signature of activity far below the surface. The narrative of Lake Vostok is also entwined with geopolitical considerations. Russia's drilling program has been closely monitored by other nations, often shrouded in secrecy. Independent researchers have occasionally obtained raw data, only to find that large sections were redacted, coordinates obscured, or anomalies blurred out. In some cases, international pressure and environmental treaties have been cited as reasons for limiting access. Yet these restrictions also conveniently prevent the public and independent science communities from fully verifying the lake's more extraordinary signals. In effect, the hidden story is carefully managed, framed as conservation rather than concealment, yet leaving the door open to speculation. In sum, Lake Vostok exemplifies the tension that defines Antarctica as a whole. The continent is at once a place of rigorous scientific study and profound uncharted mystery. Its subglacial lakes are living laboratories, yet they are also thresholds into a world that remains largely inaccessible. The official record emphasizes purity, isolation, and slow-moving scientific discovery. The hidden record, gathered from anomalies, leaks, and first-hand testimonies, suggests a dynamic, reactive, and possibly intelligent environment, one that challenges our understanding of life, geology, and even history itself. To stand on the ice above Lake Vostok is to confront the duality of Antarctica, the visible frozen surface that reassures the world, and the unseen turbulent depths that guard secrets older than recorded human history. In that tension lies the continent's most compelling story, a story of hidden waters, unseen life, and structures or phenomena that may rewrite what we know about the planet's southernmost frontier. The lake is more than water trapped beneath ice. It is a mirror reflecting the contrast between what has been revealed and what remains deliberately impenetrably concealed. The story of Antarctica's hidden depths cannot be told without returning to the final years of World War II, when Nazi Germany launched an expedition that would become one of the most controversial chapters in polar history. In 1938-1939, the German Antarctic expedition, officially tasked with mapping unclaimed territory and establishing whaling stations, ventured to a region they named New Schwabenland. On paper, it was a modest scientific and economic mission, but archival evidence suggests it had far broader objectives: reconnaissance for secret bases, testing of advanced technology, and perhaps the preliminary identification of subterranean features beneath the ice. At the time, this area was largely unexplored, providing the perfect stage for experimentation away from prying eyes. Official records of the expedition are limited, often incomplete, and frequently sanitized. Publicly, the Germans claim to be charting new territory for whaling operations, mapping ice flows, and conducting meteorological studies. In reality, they were flying long-range aerial surveys, equipped with cameras capable of photographing thousands of square miles in a single pass. Some historians note that certain photographic plates and flight logs have vanished, removed from archives or reclassified after the war. Where the official history portrays New Schwabenland as a footnote, the hidden record hints at a deliberate attempt to identify locations of strategic and possibly scientific value. Accounts from Norwegian and British sources during the same period describe unusual activity in the region. Ships reported lights over the ice at odd hours, aircraft detected strange radar reflections, and even seasoned polar navigators expressed concern at the sheer precision of some German mapping efforts. While these observations were attributed to navigational errors or optical illusions, later comparisons of surviving German maps with modern satellite imagery reveal surprisingly accurate depictions of subglacial mountains, ice streams, and hidden valleys, features that would not be formally mapped for decades. In essence, the Germans may have been charting the hidden infrastructure of Antarctica long before the rest of the world took notice. Of particular interest are the reports of advanced technology allegedly tested during the expedition. Eyewitness testimonies and post-war intelligence suggest that the Germans deployed aircraft capable of extremely high speed and unusual maneuverability, as well as experimental devices designed to penetrate ice and map subsurface features. Some even claim that small disc-shaped craft were tested in isolated valleys, a detail that has fueled decades of speculation about UFOs and secret Nazi engineering. Mainstream historians are skeptical, citing exaggeration or post-war myth-making. Yet multiple independent sources, including captured German documents, hint at experimental propulsion research that was far ahead of its time. The Nazis' interest in Antarctica did not end with the war. As Allied forces secured Germany's territories, rumors began to circulate that certain scientists and engineers had been relocated to the polar regions, perhaps under covert programs designed to preserve technological knowledge. In the official record, the Germans abandoned the continent and its installations, leaving New Schwabenland untouched. The hidden narrative, pieced together from declassified intelligence reports and witness testimonies, suggests that the Germans may have left behind not only equipment, but also physical structures designed to endure beneath the ice. Some of these constructions may have been intended to interact with geothermal heat or subglacial water systems, preserving a legacy of technology and habitation long after the expedition departed. Why would the Nazis focus on subglacial features rather than simply surface exploration? The answer may lie in the continent's unique combination of extreme isolation and geological complexity. Subglacial lakes, hidden valleys, and insulated caverns offer environments where equipment, experiments, or even populations could remain shielded from the elements and prying eyes. The contrast is stark above ground. Antarctica is inhospitable, barren, and visible. Below it is protected, conceivably warm, and largely inaccessible. For a regime obsessed with secrecy and technological advantage, this duality would have been irresistible. Some modern researchers have linked Nazi aerial photographs to anomalies discovered decades later during satellite reconnaissance. Certain depressions, angular ice formations, and smooth subglacial ridges appear in both datasets, suggesting that German teams may have identified hidden features long before modern science did. Officially, these are coincidental or the result of natural ice dynamics. Privately, analysts note the uncanny precision of the matches, arguing that some features are too geometrically consistent to be purely accidental. The implication is clear. The Nazis may have known more about Antarctica's hidden structures than history has ever acknowledged. The human dimension of the expedition adds another layer of intrigue. Several members of the German team later participated in post-war projects linked to both Allied and Soviet scientific programs, including early rocketry and polar research. Some researchers speculate that knowledge gained in New Schwabenland was quietly transferred to subglacial exploration initiatives in the decades following the war. While the official narrative frames this as the normal movement of scientists in post-war reconstruction, the hidden narrative posits a deliberate effort to preserve and exploit knowledge of Antarctica's concealed environments. Even more tantalizing are the repeated reports of mysterious signals emanating from areas corresponding to the German expedition's routes. Military and scientific teams, decades later, recorded electromagnetic anomalies, unusual thermal readings, and unexplained mechanical interference near these locations. Official explanations cite natural phenomena or technical error, yet the consistency across different time periods and teams suggests that something, a structure, a device, or a presence, continues to exist in alignment with the German mapping. If true, it would represent one of the most enduring legacies of a wartime expedition, a footprint beneath the ice, waiting perhaps for discovery. The contrast between the sanitized history and the hidden possibilities could not be greater. The public sees a brief, scientifically minded expedition, neatly concluded with Germany's defeat. The hidden record suggests a far more complex reality, a mission with dual purposes, a team equipped with experimental technology, and possibly structures or installations beneath the ice, whose existence has been erased from mainstream memory. The implication resonates with subsequent events, Operation High Jump, classified drilling programs, and the persistent anomalies of subglacial lakes all follow a thread that begins with New Schwabenland. Whether these hidden structures still exist or were fully neutralized, the legacy of the Nazi Antarctic expedition lingered. The documented anomalies, technological hints, and geographic precision suggest that what was discovered in 1938, 1939 may continue to shape the unexplored interior of Antarctica. The hidden history challenges the conventional timeline. Humanity's interaction with the continent's deepest secrets may have begun not with modern expeditions, but with a wartime mission shrouded in secrecy, ambition, and engineering far beyond the public record. Beneath the vast Antarctic ice sheet lies a landscape that defies conventional expectations. To the casual observer, the continent is a uniform expanse of white, a frozen desert stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Officially, subglacial topography is described as a complex but natural network of mountains, valleys, and lakes carved by millennia of glacial movement. Geologists map the continent's bedrock using radar, gravity surveys, and seismic data, producing detailed images of ridges, basins, and the hidden valleys that have remained sealed for millions of years. The narrative presented to the public emphasizes slow-moving ice, isolated lakes, and the continent as a frozen archive of Earth's geological past. Yet, as the data accumulates, patterns emerge that are difficult to explain solely through natural processes. Smooth domes, sharply angled ridges, and channel-like formations appear consistently in radar and satellite imagery. These features often defy conventional glacial mechanics. Ice rarely forms perfectly straight walls or right angles on a massive scale without some external influence. Official reports attribute anomalies to ice flow dynamics, basal melting, or erosion from subglacial water currents. In contrast, independent analysts combining multiple radar surveys suggest that some of these formations hint at deliberate design, channels, and chambers that could only be explained as either highly unusual geological events or as engineered spaces hidden beneath kilometers of ice. The contrast between what is explained and what is observed grows sharper when these formations are compared across different regions. In East Antarctica, for instance, the Gamburtsev Mountains lie completely buried under ice, yet display remarkably sharp ridges and uniform valleys. Seismic studies reveal a bedrock landscape that is both ancient and unexpectedly pristine, as though it has been preserved from glacial erosion in ways that defy standard models. In West Antarctica, channels beneath ice streams sometimes trace perfectly linear paths for tens of kilometers, with abrupt turns and bifurcations that resemble irrigation canals more than random meltwater formations. Official geology, offers partial explanations, but these do not account for the repeated geometries or the apparent alignment of features across distant locations. One of the most intriguing aspects of subglacial topography is the network of lakes and meltwater channels that connect them. Lake Vostok, Lake Whillans, and other subglacial lakes appear to be linked by channels that convey water, heat, and possibly biological material across vast distances. Official narratives describe these as natural hydrological systems shaped by geothermal heating and ice pressure. Yet the alignment and gradient of some channels suggest engineering precision, smooth beds, consistent widths, and junctions that mimic man-made conduits. In some cases, channels lead into deep depressions or domes, locations where temperature and pressure conditions are anomalous, as if the environment has been manipulated to create stable, protected spaces. The role of heat in shaping these landscapes cannot be understated. Geothermal flux is known to vary across the continent, but measurements reveal hotspots that coincide with unexpected topographic features. Radar and seismic surveys indicate that certain subglacial basins maintain liquid water pockets in areas where the ice should be frozen solid. These pockets sometimes exhibit temperature gradients inconsistent with known geothermal or glacial models. Official studies emphasize natural variability, yet the precision and repetition of these features hint at either a remarkably fortuitous geological coincidence or deliberate environmental manipulation. Magnetic anomalies provide additional evidence of the hidden complexity beneath the ice. Subtle deviations in Earth's magnetic field have been recorded over regions corresponding to both the Gamburtsev Mountains and Neuschwabenland. While natural mineral deposits and tectonic structures can produce such anomalies, the patterns are strikingly linear, in some cases forming geometric grids and repeated nodes. These readings align with locations associated with historical expeditions, particularly the German and early U.S. reconnaissance missions, raising the possibility that certain magnetic signatures correspond to buried structures or instruments deliberately placed beneath the ice. Seismic studies further complicate the picture. Regular monitoring of ice quakes, subglacial tremors, and glacial shifts occasionally records vibrations with no apparent source. These pulses sometimes propagate along channels or ridges, almost as though traveling through a connected network. Official interpretation often cites ice settling, tectonic micro-movements, or natural resonance. Yet the recurrence, regularity, and alignment of these pulses across distant regions suggest a pattern that could correspond to concealed infrastructure, whether geological, engineered, or a combination of both. The hidden network beneath Antarctica may also extend vertically. Radar imaging reveals voids, caverns, and hollows beneath areas of smooth ice, with some cavities large enough to contain lakes, tunnels, or other structures. These spaces are generally assumed to be natural subglacial cavities formed by meltwater erosion. However, in several cases, the geometry and distribution of these voids resemble chambers connected by passageways, in some respects akin to underground cities or storage complexes. Official reports treat these features as anomalous but natural. The hidden narrative suggests that they may represent the remnants of ancient deliberate construction, or at minimum, spaces modified for unknown purposes. One cannot ignore the implications for life in these networks. The presence of liquid water, thermal gradients, and chemical diversity make subglacial cavities prime candidates for extremophile ecosystems. Microbial life discovered in Lake Vostok and other isolated lakes demonstrates that biological activity can persist in complete darkness, high pressure, and sub-zero temperatures. But if the cavities are larger, more complex, and potentially connected, then the scale of possible ecosystems increases dramatically. Unknown organisms could exist in forms beyond current scientific understanding, possibly interacting with the physical environment in ways that create the very anomalies researchers detect. The contrast framing is crucial. The public sees Antarctica as frozen, lifeless, and inhospitable beneath the ice, punctuated only by the occasional lake or mountain peak. The hidden reality inferred from radar, seismic data, magnetic anomalies, and historical exploration is a continent with an intricate network of channels, voids, lakes, and anomalous formations. This network is partially mapped, partially measured, but mostly concealed, offering the tantalizing suggestion that the ice above is merely a protective shell, hiding a world far more dynamic and mysterious than history has acknowledged. Even for seasoned scientists, this network inspires awe and unease. Standing on the surface, one sees nothing but white ice and snow, yet beneath, a vast system of geological features, hidden lakes, and potential structures stretches for thousands of kilometers. Each survey, each drilling expedition, each radar pass adds fragments to a growing puzzle, a puzzle that may be partially artificial, partially natural, and partially beyond human comprehension. In this way, subglacial topography serves as both literal and metaphorical ground zero for the continent's hidden society. The ice above reassures the world of Antarctica's emptiness and neutrality. Beneath, the terrain, lakes and cavities hint at secrets that have persisted for millions of years, secrets that inspired Nazi reconnaissance, high-jump expeditions, and contemporary classified research. The contrast between the visible and the concealed, the official and the hidden, defines the narrative of Antarctica, a world that is simultaneously known and unknowable, frozen and teeming, mapped yet mysterious. Antarctica is not only a frozen desert, but also an electrically charged frontier. Above the ice, auroras shimmer in the sky, dazzling in colors of green, pink, and violet. Officially, these lights are explained as solar particles interacting with Earth's magnetic field, a phenomenon that has been studied extensively and recorded by satellites, ground stations, and aircraft. Scientists delight in the visual spectacle, emphasizing the aurora's scientific value for understanding geomagnetic activity and solar wind. Yet beneath this natural explanation lies a growing body of evidence, suggesting that some of the continent's electromagnetic phenomena may originate not from the sun, but from the ice itself, or from what lies beneath it. The first hints came from early polar expeditions, equipped with magnetometers and rudimentary radio sensors. Researchers reported sudden localized magnetic fluctuations that could not be accounted for by known geological formations or solar activity. These anomalies were often brief, intense, and spatially confined, as if originating from a precise point rather than the broad atmospheric currents responsible for auroras. Official reports dismissed these readings as sensor malfunctions, interference, or the result of extreme cold affecting electronic equipment. Yet the repetition and consistency of these events across multiple expeditions hinted at a pattern too coherent to be ignored. Satellite data collected in the latter half of the 20th century revealed a more detailed picture. Regions in East Antarctica, particularly near the Gamburtsev Mountains and subglacial lakes like Vostok and Whillans, exhibited unusually strong magnetic gradients. These were not random spikes. They aligned with subglacial topographic features and channels previously mapped by radar and seismic surveys. The correlation suggested that the anomalies were linked to specific subsurface structures rather than natural ice flow or random mineral deposits. This observation sparked quiet interest in intelligence circles, as the potential implications of such energy sources were significant. A hidden network beneath the ice might be influencing electromagnetic activity at the surface. The connection between electromagnetic anomalies and human exploration became even more intriguing during Operation High Jump and subsequent expeditions. Pilots and naval personnel reported compass deviations, unexplained radio static, and sudden instrument failures in areas corresponding to hidden ridges and cavities. These occurrences were typically labeled as environmental hazards, minor glitches, or interference from solar storms. Yet when plotted on maps, they coincided remarkably with known subglacial features, including channels, depressions, and suspected artificial formations. Officially, there is no direct link. The hidden narrative, however, suggests that the anomalies could represent energy emitted or reflected by structures or networks beneath the ice, a subtle but persistent signal detectable across multiple technological platforms. Further evidence comes from unusual atmospheric phenomena that accompany the auroras. Observers have reported bright flashes, unusual light refractions, and sudden waves of color that seem to originate not from the upper atmosphere, but from lower layers, occasionally in alignment with magnetic anomalies on the surface. In some cases, these lights appear to pulse rhythmically, as though responding to a signal from below. Scientists are divided. Conventional interpretations attribute them to complex interactions between charged particles, ice crystals, and geomagnetic forces. Skeptics call the patterns coincidental, but researchers with access to historical flight and satellite data note that these pulses are frequently co-located with subglacial lakes and channels identified in radar surveys, suggesting a relationship that extends from deep beneath the ice to the auroral displays above. The question naturally arises, what could be generating these electromagnetic phenomena? Several possibilities exist, ranging from geothermal activity and mineral deposits to unknown biological or technological sources. Some researchers hypothesize that conductive structures beneath the ice, whether naturally occurring or engineered, could channel electrical energy, creating localized fields and influencing surface measurements. Others consider the potential for geothermal currents interacting with subglacial water to produce low-frequency electromagnetic pulses, yet no single explanation accounts for all observations. The anomalies are precise, repeatable, and in some cases exhibit characteristics akin to modulation or signal transmission. Historical reports provide further context. During the German Antarctic expedition to Neuschwabenland, pilots and surveyors documented strange lights above and around subglacial valleys. These were dismissed at the time as reflections, atmospheric phenomena, or fatigue-induced hallucinations. Similarly, Operation High Jump personnel described encounters with flying discs and instrument interference, details officially downplayed in reports and press coverage. Viewed collectively, these anecdotes suggest a long-standing pattern. Electromagnetic activity in Antarctica may be closely tied to the hidden environment beneath the ice, and it may have been noticed, documented, and partially concealed for decades. Modern monitoring systems continue to detect anomalies. Magnetometers and radio sensors deployed across research stations, particularly in East Antarctica, occasionally register bursts of energy that do not correspond with solar activity, storms, or tectonic events. These bursts are often brief, sometimes lasting only seconds, and are characterized by frequency ranges unusual for natural phenomena. Independent analyses of these events indicate that they may follow patterns consistent with subglacial structures, flowing along channels or converging on specific nodes. The repetition and alignment suggest intentional or organized sources, though their origin remains unexplained. Some theorists take the phenomenon a step further, proposing that the electromagnetic signals could be a form of communication or environmental feedback from the hidden society beneath the ice. This notion, often dismissed in mainstream science as speculative, gains plausibility when combined with the known anomalies, the perfectly aligned channels, subglacial lakes exhibiting unexplained currents, sudden thermal pulses, and historical accounts of aircraft interference. In this view, Antarctica's electromagnetic activity is not merely a byproduct of natural forces, but a sign of interaction, a subtle, persistent acknowledgement of human presence in a highly controlled environment. The contrast framing here is crucial. For most of the world, auroras are a visual delight, a celestial phenomenon explained by textbook physics. Beneath the ice, however, they may be only the surface manifestation of an intricate, energy-filled network extending deep into the continent's hidden interior. The electromagnetic anomalies recorded above the ice could be the echo of subterranean forces, a glimpse into a dynamic system that is rarely, if ever, visible to humans. In this duality, dazzling auroras above, mysterious signals below, Antarctica presents a stage for a story that is both scientific and profoundly enigmatic. The implications are staggering. If electromagnetic phenomena are indeed tied to subsurface networks, then every measurement, every instrument anomaly, every unexpected auroral pulse could be a clue to Antarctica's hidden structure. The continent becomes not just a frozen expanse or a site for scientific inquiry, but a living, interactive system capable of producing measurable effects on the surface. This hidden energy, largely ignored or unexplained by mainstream science, may represent the final layer of evidence linking subglacial lakes, channels, and structures to a larger unseen presence. In this way, the auroras and electromagnetic anomalies serve as a bridge between what is known and what remains concealed. The visible displays captivate the world, offering an accessible spectacle. The hidden signals challenge our assumptions, hinting at a complex, dynamic environment beneath the ice. By studying both, researchers can begin to appreciate the continent's duality: above, a pristine frozen wilderness; below, a network of water, energy, and possibly intelligence that has persisted for millennia, shielded from human eyes, but detectable through careful observation and analysis. Despite decades of exploration and technological advancement, Antarctica continues to claim those who venture too far into its hidden depths. Modern expeditions, staffed by experienced scientists and equipped with cutting-edge instruments, are far better prepared than early explorers. Yet, paradoxically, the continent seems to have become even more dangerous, not through natural hazards alone, but through a series of disappearances and unexplained incidents that defy conventional explanation. Officially, the narrative is simple: extreme cold, hidden crevasses, sudden storms, and equipment failures are the natural risks of polar research. But for those who study anomalies beneath the ice, the pattern is more complex, chilling, and persistent. One of the most striking cases occurred in the late 1990s, when a team of glaciologists ventured near the eastern edge of Lake Vostok. Their mission was routine: to monitor ice flow, conduct subglacial water sampling, and deploy remote sensors. Within days, several team members reported that their instruments were behaving strangely, displaying readings inconsistent with environmental conditions. Communications with the base station became intermittent, with radio signals distorted by unknown interference. Then one night, 2 researchers vanished. Search parties scoured the area, but found only a partially buried tent and equipment, scattered in a pattern that suggested a sudden, unexplained departure. Officially, the incident was logged as a tragic accident, attributed to misadventure in extreme weather. Privately, colleagues and insiders suggested that the anomalies recorded prior to the disappearance were far too precise and coordinated to be coincidental. Disappearances are not confined to scientific teams. Pilots conducting aerial surveys have reported instances of instrumentation failure when flying over certain subglacial features, with some losing contact for extended periods before re-emerging. In some cases, aircraft returned to base with unexplained damage, fractured instrumentation panels, or navigation systems completely scrambled. Investigators concluded that the most likely causes were atmospheric interference or ice particles. But the recurrence of these events in areas correlated with hidden lakes, channels, and geometric formations beneath the ice has led some researchers to suspect a more organized source. Even more unnerving are the accounts of researchers who return physically intact but psychologically altered. These individuals often describe sensations of being watched, hearing low-frequency hums, or perceiving lights beneath the ice that vanish before instruments can confirm them. In some cases, personnel have attempted to photograph or record these anomalies, only to find that cameras fail or storage media corrupts inexplicably. Medical evaluations frequently cite fatigue or stress, yet personal journals hint at experiences that cannot be dismissed so easily. The contrast is striking. The official narrative assures safety and scientific rationality, while the hidden reality points to forces or conditions beyond current human understanding. Many disappearances share common environmental characteristics. They occur near subglacial lakes, along channels that may connect these lakes, or in areas with unusual thermal or magnetic readings. In several cases, survivors have described sudden shifts in ice behavior, crevasses opening wider, snow forming strange patterns, or surfaces that seemed unnaturally smooth and reflective. Instruments often register anomalies moments before disappearances, suggesting a link between the physical environment and the events themselves. Some analysts propose that these are not random hazards, but a response from the environment, a subtle, possibly intelligent interaction with intruding humans. Historical context reinforces the pattern. Operation Highjump, the German Antarctic expeditions, and later classified drilling programs all ventured into regions now associated with modern disappearances. While early explorers lacked sophisticated instrumentation, their reports contain strikingly similar accounts: sudden fogs, magnetic disturbances, optical illusions, and the inexplicable movement of objects beneath the ice. The hidden continuity suggests that Antarctica's concealed environment has long been responsive, dynamic, and selective in whom it allows to penetrate its depths. Political and logistical pressures also shape the narrative. Many disappearances are officially attributed to extreme weather or human error, sometimes accompanied by travel restrictions or temporary classification of incident reports. In some cases, government agencies advise international teams to avoid specific areas entirely, citing environmental protection or operational safety. Yet insiders hint that the real reason may be more ominous: certain zones are too sensitive, too active, or too anomalous to be observed without risk. This careful framing ensures that public records maintain the appearance of natural hazard, while the hidden record accumulates, largely inaccessible to outside scrutiny. The psychological dimension is equally significant. Survivors and colleagues report a pervasive sense of caution, bordering on fear. Teams planning excursions near known anomalous areas experience heightened stress, hypervigilance, and an awareness of subtle signs, unusual ice patterns, unexplained noises, or shifts in instrumentation. While official protocols emphasize safety training and emergency procedures, these measures rarely address the unexplained phenomena that precede many incidents. In effect, Antarctica's hidden environment exerts influence not only physically, but psychologically, shaping behavior and perception in ways that are difficult to quantify. Patterns of disappearance also suggest temporality and seasonality. Many incidents occur during periods when subglacial dynamics are most active, when meltwater channels expand, lakes shift slightly, or magnetic anomalies fluctuate. This correlation points to a living system, one responsive to external factors, including human intrusion. The contrast is chilling. Outside observers see ice sheets as static, predictable, and mapped. Insiders know that beneath the surface lies a dynamic network with rhythms, pulses, and behaviors that are largely unknown and potentially dangerous. Technology, ironically, both mitigates and exacerbates risk. Advanced radar, GPS, and thermal imaging can detect anomalies before human teams approach, sometimes allowing for evasive maneuvers or mission adjustments. Yet these same technologies occasionally trigger unexplained interference, malfunctions, or corrupted data. Equipment left behind often shows evidence of damage inconsistent with environmental conditions. These recurring patterns suggest that the hidden environment interacts with technology in unpredictable ways, reinforcing the duality of Antarctica as both accessible and impenetrable. Finally, the human cost of these disappearances is not merely physical. Families, colleagues, and scientific communities are left with incomplete information, uncertain conclusions, and unanswered questions. Official reports often minimize the psychological impact, emphasizing procedural explanations. Behind the scenes, however, the fear and fascination persist, driving a covert awareness that some areas of Antarctica are effectively off-limits, not due to bureaucracy or climate, but because they are deeply anomalous, possibly self-protective, and potentially dangerous to those who intrude. The contrast framing is once again clear. Publicly, Antarctica is a site of heroic exploration, scientific progress, and international collaboration. Privately, it is a landscape of vanishing individuals, unexplained instrument behavior, and environmental interactions that challenge every assumption about life, geology, and technology. These disappearances form the connective tissue between historical expeditions, subglacial topography, electromagnetic anomalies, and the broader hidden society beneath the ice. Each incident, each unexplained event, reinforces the sense that Antarctica is not merely a passive continent, but an active, dynamic, and selectively vigilant environment, guarding its deepest secrets with precision and persistence. In sum, modern disappearances highlight a terrifying continuity. The continent's hidden interior has consistently resisted human intrusion, shaping both events and narratives. It is a place where instruments fail, humans vanish, and the visible ice surface offers only a partial glimpse of the forces at work beneath. These events, interpreted collectively, suggest that Antarctica is not simply a frozen wilderness, but a domain with its own rules, boundaries, and potentially sentient responses, a hidden society that observes, reacts, and protects itself from those who would explore too deeply. For decades, the notion of a hidden civilization beneath Antarctica was relegated to fringe speculation, dismissed by mainstream science as fantasy or conspiracy. Officially, the continent is presented as an uninhabitable expanse, frozen, barren, and devoid of life beyond microbes surviving in isolated lakes. Researchers focus on geology, climatology, and extremophile biology, emphasizing slow, methodical progress over sensational claims. Yet, as anomalies accumulate, subglacial lakes, channels with unnatural geometries, electromagnetic pulses, unexplained thermal pockets, and the disappearances of explorers, a provocative question emerges: could Antarctica conceal more than ice and rock? Could it harbor a civilization, either ancient, technologically advanced, or fundamentally different from anything on the surface? Theories about a hidden civilization draw on multiple lines of evidence. Subglacial topography offers the first clue. Certain channels, depressions, and dome-like formations exhibit geometric consistency that natural ice movement struggles to explain. Straight corridors, right-angle intersections, and repeated patterns suggest intentional design, leading some analysts to propose that these features are the remnants of construction or engineering. They may not be cities in the traditional sense, but rather complex subterranean networks optimized for protection, environmental control, and longevity, hallmarks of organized, intelligent habitation. Official geologists emphasize natural explanations, yet the hidden interpretation posits a deliberate blueprint preserved beneath the ice for millennia. The presence of liquid water in multiple interconnected lakes adds a second layer of intrigue. Liquid water under kilometers of ice is rare, energetically costly to maintain, and typically unstable. Yet, Antarctica hosts a network of lakes that remain liquid due to a combination of pressure, geothermal heat, and perhaps unexplained factors. These lakes could provide not only sustenance for microbial life, but also a stable environment for larger organisms or technological systems. Some theorists propose that the lakes were intentionally maintained, suggesting advanced knowledge of thermodynamics, hydrology, or energy manipulation. If accurate, these subterranean waters are not natural anomalies, but engineered habitats, sustaining life or infrastructure invisible to conventional observation. Electromagnetic anomalies provide yet another compelling element. Recurrent magnetic pulses, radio interference, and localized auroral distortions often correlate with subglacial formations, while conventional science attributes these to geological or atmospheric factors. The precision and repetition of the signals suggest a controlled source. In the hidden civilization hypothesis, these signals could represent communication networks, environmental regulation systems, or defensive measures, indicating not only intelligent presence, but technological sophistication. The contrast is stark. The world sees auroras as natural beauty. The hidden interpretation frames them as echoes of subterranean activity, subtle yet measurable, hinting at an unseen society beneath the ice. Historical expeditions lend indirect support to these theories. Nazi reconnaissance missions, Operation High Jump, and early Soviet drilling programs all observed phenomena that remain unexplained: optical distortions, electromagnetic interference, anomalous formations, and reports of unidentified craft or structures. Official narratives minimize these accounts, often attributing them to human error, fatigue, or extreme environmental conditions. However, when viewed through the lens of a hidden civilization, these historical encounters take on a new significance. They may represent early contact with the environment's protective or self-regulating mechanisms, or even with the civilization itself, glimpsed indirectly through instruments, lights, or unexplained mechanical phenomena. Biological considerations also inform the theory. Microbial life discovered in subglacial lakes demonstrates that life can thrive in extreme, isolated conditions. If microbes can survive, larger, more complex organisms might also exist, possibly evolving unique adaptations to life beneath ice and rock. Some researchers speculate about creatures capable of manipulating their environment or creating structures, blurring the lines between biology and technology. The hidden civilization hypothesis accommodates this possibility, proposing that intelligence may not be human in origin, but rather evolved under extreme Antarctic conditions, developing tools, infrastructure, and strategies for survival without surface visibility. Geothermal energy and chemical anomalies further support the possibility of intelligent design. Subglacial pockets of warmth, stable liquid water, and unique chemical compositions could serve as energy sources, environmental stabilizers, or habitat maintenance systems. The regularity and distribution of these anomalies, particularly when aligned with structural patterns, suggest more than random geological processes. In this framework, Antarctica's hidden society might harness natural forces to sustain itself, shaping its surroundings in subtle yet measurable ways. The contrast remains stark. The world interprets geothermal activity as a passive natural process, whereas the hidden perspective views it as potentially orchestrated or utilized by an intelligent agent. Speculation about the civilization's origin spans millennia. Some theorists propose that it predates human history, surviving global cataclysms that erased surface civilizations. Others suggest it emerged from surface humans who retreated underground in response to climate, war, or other threats. A third possibility is that it represents an entirely separate branch of life, intelligent yet fundamentally alien, with goals and methods incomprehensible to modern observers. While evidence is largely circumstantial, the persistence and alignment of multiple anomalies, topographic, electromagnetic, thermal, and biological, give weight to the hypothesis that some form of intelligent presence exists beneath Antarctica's ice. Skeptics argue that the hidden civilization hypothesis is speculative, highlighting the lack of direct observation or confirmed artifacts. They point to the natural complexity of ice flow, subglacial hydrology, and geomagnetic variation as sufficient to explain anomalies. However, proponents counter that the accumulation of correlated data points across multiple domains, geography, physics, biology, history, defies simple explanation. The hidden civilization theory is not based on a single observation, but on the convergence of multiple independent anomalies that consistently resist naturalistic explanation. The contrast is unmistakable. Mainstream science emphasizes isolated explanations. The hidden perspective sees a coherent, interconnected system, suggesting intelligence. Ultimately, the theory of a hidden civilization reframes the narrative of Antarctica. The continent is no longer a frozen wasteland, studied primarily for climate records and geological insight. Instead, it becomes an active reactive environment with layers of complexity invisible to casual observer. Historical expeditions, anomalous readings, subglacial structures, and unexplained disappearances all converge into a story of potential intelligence thriving beneath the ice. The public narrative reassures with order, predictability, and the romance of heroic exploration. The hidden narrative presents danger, sophistication, and the possibility that the continent harbors a society entirely removed from human knowledge, observing, shaping, and preserving itself in secrecy. In this way, the hidden civilization hypothesis serves as a lens through which all previous anomalies gain context. Thermal fluctuations become indicators of life or technology, electromagnetic disturbances suggest communication networks, and geometric subglacial structures hint at intentional design. The disappearances of modern explorers, once considered tragic accidents, can be interpreted as interactions with an environment that is not merely passive but selectively responsive. Each piece of evidence reinforces the notion that Antarctica's ice is both a shield and a window, concealing a civilization while hinting at its presence through measurable effects on the surface. The story of Antarctica's hidden society cannot be told without examining humanity's relentless efforts to pierce the ice and reach the continent's concealed interior. Modern drilling programs, both scientific and military, represent the cutting edge of this ambition. Officially, these initiatives are framed as climate research, ice core sampling, and geological analysis. Ice cores provide invaluable data on atmospheric composition, temperature fluctuations, and even volcanic activity over hundreds of thousands of years. Yet beneath this veneer of scientific inquiry lies a darker, more competitive undertone: the search for subglacial anomalies, structures, and resources that could fundamentally alter our understanding of the continent and its hidden systems. The earliest large-scale drilling initiatives date back to the mid-20th century, following discoveries of subglacial lakes and the development of radar and seismic mapping. Teams from the United States, Russia, and later international coalitions established research stations in proximity to Lake Vostok, Lake Whillans, and other deep subglacial basins. Drilling operations were designed to penetrate ice sheets kilometers thick, reaching liquid water that had remained isolated for millennia. Official objectives emphasized paleoclimate records, microbial studies, and hydrogeology, but behind closed doors, some programs carried additional directives to detect anomalies in the ice, investigate unusual magnetic and thermal readings, and explore the possibility of artificial formations or hidden networks below the surface. Drilling itself presents formidable challenges. The Antarctic ice sheet averages 2,000 meters thick and can exceed 4,000 meters in East Antarctica. Extreme cold, high pressure, and shifting ice currents make deep drilling both technically and logistically complex. Special hot water drills, electromechanical coring systems, and pressure-resistant casings are required. Even with these technologies, equipment failure, contamination, and incomplete core retrieval are frequent. The contrast is striking. The world sees elegant scientific solutions, data-rich cores, and careful sampling protocols. The hidden reality is a high-stakes endeavor where a single miscalculation can compromise decades of research or expose explorers to unforeseen dangers emanating from subglacial networks. Some drilling programs have reported unexplained anomalies in the ice cores themselves. Researchers occasionally encounter layers of ice that exhibit unusual density, embedded metallic particles, or organic material inconsistent with known Antarctic geology. Official explanations often attribute these to volcanic ash, meteorite dust, or contamination during drilling. However, anomalies sometimes align precisely with subglacial formations mapped by radar or magnetic surveys. The implication is profound. These cores may contain evidence of engineered structures, past activity, or even material left by a hidden society, data that conventional science hesitates to interpret outside controlled parameters. Operational secrecy adds another dimension. Many deep drilling projects are conducted under stringent security protocols, with access limited to select scientists and military personnel. Some funding is classified, equipment specifications are restricted, and specific findings are withheld from public databases. Officially, this is justified on grounds of safety, environmental protection, and competitive research. The hidden narrative suggests an additional rationale: the potential discovery of artificial structures, unknown ecosystems, or energy sources is politically and strategically sensitive. Access to such knowledge could confer not only scientific prestige, but also tactical advantage, making the drilling sites of covert competition as much as scientific exploration. Incidents during drilling operations reinforce the notion that Antarctica's interior is not passive. Teams frequently report equipment anomalies, drills stalling unexpectedly, sensors malfunctioning, and ice cores fracturing along unexplained planes. In certain cases, thermal fluctuations are recorded that cannot be explained by geothermal gradients alone. Some drill operators describe sudden localized vibrations or acoustic phenomena, sounds transmitted through ice and water, as if originating from a structural cavity. Official reports attribute these to natural ice movement, mechanical issues, or human error. Yet multiple independent accounts suggest a pattern consistent with interaction from hidden structures or dynamic subglacial systems. International competition further intensifies the stakes. The United States, Russia, and China have invested heavily in deep ice exploration programs, often operating in overlapping regions. Collaborations occur under scientific frameworks, but subtle rivalries shape priorities, access, and secrecy. Some analysts argue that the drive to explore subglacial lakes and channels is motivated less by climate science and more by the potential discovery of energy sources, biological systems, or artifacts indicative of a hidden civilization. The contrast is again stark. The public narrative emphasizes international collaboration, data sharing, and environmental stewardship. The hidden reality may involve clandestine reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, and strategic positioning beneath the ice. Technology continues to evolve, extending the reach of these programs. Autonomous submersibles, capable of navigating liquid subglacial lakes without human operators, are deployed to map unseen cavities and record physical, chemical, and biological data. These machines transmit live readings and high-resolution imagery, yet some footage is classified or partially redacted. Radar and sonar complement drilling operations, producing three-dimensional maps of channels, voids, and lakebeds. Data analysis occasionally reveals anomalies, too precise or patterned to be purely natural, straight tunnels, smooth depressions, or material deposits inconsistent with geological formation. Officially, these findings are attributed to ice dynamics or analytical error. Privately, Analysts consider the possibility that they reveal hidden infrastructure, technology, or even habitation. Ethical concerns complicate exploration. Penetrating ancient subglacial lakes risks contamination, potentially introducing surface microbes to ecosystems that have evolved in isolation for millions of years. Scientific protocols are rigorous, yet drilling teams often face pressure to accelerate missions, maximize data yield, or explore anomalous areas despite risks. This tension between discovery and preservation underscores the broader narrative: humanity is intruding upon an environment that is simultaneously fragile, dangerous, and potentially intelligent. The continent's hidden society, if it exists, may interpret these incursions as threats, perhaps explaining some of the anomalies, disruptions, and disappearances recorded in recent decades. Historical continuity is also significant. Deep drilling programs echo the reconnaissance missions of the German Antarctic expedition, Operation High Jump, and early Soviet programs. Each generation of explorers has probed further, driven by curiosity, ambition, and sometimes covert objectives. The hidden narrative links these efforts across time, suggesting a persistent human desire to access knowledge beneath the ice, while simultaneously encountering a responsive and protective environment. The contrast framing remains clear. The official record emphasizes measured progress and scientific achievement. The hidden record points to an active, dynamic system that resists intrusion and guards its secrets. In sum, drilling programs and core sampling missions serve as both a literal and metaphorical descent into Antarctica's hidden society. Every meter of ice penetrated, every sensor deployed, and every core retrieved brings humanity closer to understanding, or perhaps provoking, the continent's subterranean mysteries. Officially, these efforts are celebrated as milestones of science and human ingenuity. Beneath the surface, however, they represent a high-stakes struggle with an environment whose anomalies, forces, and potential inhabitants remain largely unknown. The duality is profound. Antarctica is at once a laboratory for climate science and a frontier for one of the most enigmatic and persistent mysteries on Earth. As drilling programs probed deeper into Antarctica's ice, a complementary revolution unfolded above: the rise of satellite surveillance. From orbit, space-based instruments provide a perspective impossible to achieve on the ground, allowing scientists and agencies to map the continent's hidden topography, monitor ice dynamics, and detect subtle anomalies across vast expanses. Officially, satellites are tools for climate research, ice mass measurements, and environmental monitoring. Yet, when combined with historical data, subglacial mapping, and electromagnetic readings, they reveal patterns that challenge conventional understanding and hint at structures, channels, and features far more intricate than previously imagined. Early satellite missions in the 1970s and 1980s primarily focused on broad mapping and ice coverage. Landsat imagery, for instance, offered the first comprehensive views of Antarctic surface formations, highlighting glaciers, ridges, and crevasses. At first glance, these images appeared consistent with standard glacial models, but analysts noticed anomalies: smooth depressions, unusually straight ridges, and recurring geometric formations that seemed unlikely to result solely from natural ice flow. These patterns, faint yet persistent across multiple frames and seasons, suggested underlying structures that might be influencing the overlying ice. While official reports attributed the anomalies to radar artifacts or imaging errors, independent researchers began compiling cross-referenced maps, noting alignments with subglacial lakes and channels identified in drilling and seismic surveys. The development of radar and LiDAR-equipped satellites further expanded capabilities. Ice-penetrating radar can measure bedrock topography beneath kilometers of ice, producing three-dimensional images of valleys, ridges, and voids invisible to optical observation. LiDAR adds precision to surface mapping, highlighting subtle depressions, channels, and domes. When these data sets are overlaid, the resulting maps reveal corridors, nodes, and features consistent with organized, possibly engineered, systems. Certain valleys appear unnaturally straight, junctions are sharply angled, and repeated patterns emerge across distances spanning hundreds of kilometers. Official explanations emphasize glacial flow dynamics and erosion, yet the consistency and regularity of these formations challenge the limits of natural explanation. Electromagnetic monitoring from satellites has also revealed anomalies. Specialized sensors can detect fluctuations in magnetic fields, auroral intensity, and radio frequency interference. Some readings correspond closely with subglacial lakes, channels, and depressions previously mapped by radar. These signals often appear as localized spikes, pulses, or coherent patterns that are difficult to reconcile with solar activity alone. The correlation between electromagnetic anomalies and topographic features supports a growing body of evidence, suggesting that the hidden networks beneath the ice may interact with, or even generate, detectable energy signatures. Satellites provide a vantage point for observing these phenomena at scale, making the invisible visible, yet official interpretations continue to frame them as natural or coincidental. Modern reconnaissance satellites bring additional capabilities: multispectral imaging, thermal detection, and gravity anomaly mapping. Thermal imaging occasionally reveals pockets of heat where surface ice would be expected to remain frozen solid, aligning with subglacial lakes, channels, or suspected cavities. Gravity anomalies indicate mass concentrations inconsistent with known geology, suggesting dense materials, structured voids beneath the ice. These tools allow researchers to detect features previously considered unreachable, revealing a hidden landscape of extraordinary complexity. The contrast is clear. While the public sees the continent as uniform, static, and featureless, satellite data uncovers dynamic, structured, and sometimes anomalous subglacial formations. Historical continuity strengthens the case. Regions identified through early radar surveys as anomalous, such as the Gamburtsev Mountains or areas beneath Neuschwabenland, correspond with persistent features in satellite imagery decades later. This consistency suggests stability in subglacial structures, whether natural or engineered, reinforcing the possibility of a hidden, enduring presence. Moreover, satellite monitoring can track seasonal or temporal shifts in ice movement, electromagnetic activity, and thermal flux, offering a dynamic view of Antarctica's hidden environment. Observers note that some anomalies appear to respond to external conditions, hinting at an interactive or adaptive system beneath the ice. International interest in satellite reconnaissance is both scientific and strategic. Agencies in the United States, Russia, China, and Europe have deployed dedicated polar orbiting satellites, often sharing environmental data but occasionally operating in competitive secrecy. While climate modeling, ice sheet monitoring, and logistical planning dominate public reporting, analysts recognize that these satellites also provide unprecedented insight into hidden anomalies. Subtle changes in topography, unexplained energy signatures, and unclassified imagery hint at structures or channels that may correspond to a hidden civilization, unknown ecosystems, or otherwise concealed features. In this sense, satellites are not merely scientific tools, but instruments of reconnaissance, observation, and indirect interaction with the continent's hidden network. One of the most intriguing contributions of satellite technology is the ability to cross-reference multiple datasets. Optical images, radar profiles, thermal maps, and gravity measurements can be overlaid to create multidimensional models of subglacial landscapes. These models reveal correlations that would be impossible to detect through isolated methods: linear channels connecting lakes, domed depressions with unusual thermal signatures, and magnetic anomalies coinciding with suspected structural nodes. The accumulation of such evidence challenges official narratives that attribute these formations solely to natural processes. While caution and scientific rigor are necessary, the convergence of independent observations strengthens the argument for hidden complexity. Satellite surveillance has also enhanced safety and situational awareness for modern drilling and reconnaissance missions. By mapping ice thickness, crevasse locations, and environmental hazards, satellites reduce the risks of equipment failure and human loss. Paradoxically, this very capability makes the anomalies beneath the ice more visible, allowing researchers to plan targeted investigations while revealing just enough to spark further questions. The contrast is striking. Surface-level safety measures facilitate intrusion into an environment that may be both protective and responsive, illuminating patterns that remain hidden to casual observation. Finally, satellite reconnaissance underscores the duality of Antarctica itself. From orbit, the continent appears as a vast white expanse, pristine, static, and lifeless. Yet beneath this apparent simplicity lies a landscape of extraordinary complexity, revealed only through careful multispectral observation. Linear features, thermal anomalies, electromagnetic spikes, and unexplained depressions collectively suggest the presence of systems, natural, engineered, or both, that challenge conventional assumptions. Satellites provide the vantage point to perceive this hidden society indirectly, bridging the gap between human observation and the continent's secret interior. In summary, satellite surveillance and modern reconnaissance have transformed our understanding of Antarctica. What was once a distant, inaccessible frontier is now mapped, measured, and monitored with unprecedented precision. The dual narrative remains publicly. Satellites serve science, safety, and climate monitoring. Secretly, they uncover anomalies, hidden networks, and possibly the traces of a civilization beneath the ice. Each data point, each image, each anomaly detected from orbit contributes to the growing realization that Antarctica is not merely a frozen wilderness, but a dynamic, structured, and enigmatic environment, guarding its secrets while revealing them, just enough to intrigue, challenge, and compel humanity to explore further. Antarctica, often perceived as an isolated continent at the bottom of the world, may not be as disconnected as it appears. Increasingly, researchers and theorists have noted correlations between anomalies beneath the Antarctic ice and phenomena occurring elsewhere on the planet, particularly in the Arctic. While the northern hemisphere is geographically and politically distinct, the planet's polar regions share surprising geophysical, electromagnetic, and climatic similarities that suggest a potential global network of hidden or interactive systems. Officially, these parallels are framed in terms of climate modeling, polar magnetics, and ocean currents. Privately, they raise the possibility that what lies beneath Antarctica may resonate with, mirror, or even connect to phenomena occurring in the far north. Electromagnetic anomalies, a defining feature of the Antarctic hidden networks, have also been detected in Arctic regions. Satellite and ground-based monitoring reveal localized spikes, pulses, and distortions in magnetic fields above Greenland, northern Canada, and Siberia. These anomalies, often dismissed as solar or geomagnetic variations, exhibit characteristics remarkably similar to those recorded over subglacial Antarctic formations. The patterns, frequency ranges, spatial localization, and temporal pulses suggest a common mechanism or source that transcends hemisphere. For some theorists, this correlation hints at a planetary scale system, one in which hidden structures beneath polar ice influence, or are influenced by, broader geophysical forces. Subglacial topography provides another link. Just as Antarctica conceals lakes, channels, and geometric formations beneath its ice, the Arctic hosts similar features beneath Greenland's ice sheet and other northern glaciers. Radar and seismic surveys reveal subglacial valleys, lakes, and ridges that closely parallel the forms and alignments observed in the south. In some cases, linear channels and domed depressions appear in both hemispheres, raising questions about whether these formations are purely natural or the product of intelligent design, environmental engineering, or a combination of both. The repetition of geometric patterns at polar extremes challenges assumptions about ice sheet randomness and points to possible hidden networks that span hemispheres. Historical expeditions reinforce this polar connection. Explorers of the Arctic, much like those in Antarctica, documented unexpected magnetic deviations, unexplained light phenomena, and sudden environmental hazards. While official explanations often attribute these events to solar storms, weather anomalies, or equipment error, the similarities to Antarctic reports are striking. Pilots, surveyors, and indigenous observers in the Arctic have all described phenomena, shimmering lights, pulsing hums, and equipment malfunctions that mirror accounts from Operation High Jump, German Antarctic missions, and modern drilling operations. This continuity hints at a possible systemic link, suggesting that hidden forces or structures beneath ice sheets may operate according to patterns not constrained by hemisphere. Oceanic currents provide a third layer of potential connectivity. Both the Arctic and Antarctic contribute to the planet's thermohaline circulation, which redistributes heat and salinity around the globe. Subglacial lakes, channels, and meltwater flows influence ice sheet stability and, by extension, ocean currents. If hidden networks beneath polar ice exist, their environmental impact could extend far beyond local anomalies, subtly affecting climate, magnetic fields, and even atmospheric phenomena. While conventional science models these effects in terms of water dynamics and heat transfer, the hidden narrative allows for the possibility that they are influenced by structures, energy systems, or other intelligent mechanisms operating beneath the ice. The possibility of communication or energy transfer between poles has been raised in fringe and speculative research. Some theorists argue that recurring electromagnetic spikes, auroral pulsations, and magnetic distortions observed simultaneously in both hemispheres could indicate the existence of interconnected subglacial networks. While mainstream science attributes these correlations to planetary magnetic field fluctuations or solar activity, the temporal alignment and specific localization of signals suggest a more complex system at work. If true, Antarctica's hidden society may not be entirely isolated, but part of a larger planetary phenomena, its influence or interaction detectable across vast distances. Biological and ecological factors further underscore the Arctic-Antarctic connection. Extremophile organisms capable of surviving in subglacial lakes in both hemispheres demonstrate that life can adapt to isolated, high-pressure, low-temperature environments. In some cases, microbial communities exhibit metabolic pathways and genetic adaptations that are strikingly similar despite geographic separation. These parallels suggest convergent evolution or the possibility of shared conditions and mechanisms that facilitate life under ice. For those considering the hidden civilization hypothesis, such findings raise the provocative question: could these polar networks sustain life or intelligence that is globally distributed, or at least coordinated, in unknown ways? Satellite imagery provides additional evidence. High-resolution optical, radar, and thermal maps reveal structural similarities between polar subglacial landscapes. Linear depressions, domed formations, and repetitive channel patterns appear in both Antarctica and Greenland. Electromagnetic mapping, gravity anomalies, and thermal readings reinforce these parallels. When combined, these datasets imply the existence of non-random structures, potentially reflecting either advanced natural processes or hidden engineering. The contrast framing persists. The public sees two isolated poles, studied for climate, geology, and ice stability. The hidden narrative reveals mirrored systems with striking parallels, possibly indicative of intelligent design, adaptive environmental mechanisms, or interconnected subglacial networks. Historical and modern exploration also hints at a temporal aspect to polar connectivity. Reports of anomalies, disappearances, and equipment malfunctions in both hemispheres often occur during periods of heightened geomagnetic activity, seasonal melt, or subglacial hydrodynamic shifts. These temporal correlations suggest that hidden networks, if they exist, may operate cyclically, responding to environmental conditions in ways that extend beyond a single hemisphere. The alignment of events across poles observed over decades strengthens the argument that these are not isolated anomalies, but elements of a planetary scale system with responsive and possibly intelligent characteristics. Geopolitical considerations complicate the picture. Arctic nations, like those invested in Antarctic research, maintain extensive scientific and military surveillance networks. Data sharing is limited, funding is competitive, and research priorities are closely guarded. This duality mirrors the hidden Antarctic narrative. Publicly, research focuses on environmental monitoring and climate science. Privately, nations accumulate knowledge that may hint at subglacial anomalies, potential resources, or even intelligence networks beneath polar ice. The strategic dimension adds weight to the idea that the poles are not only scientific frontiers, but also zones of cautious reconnaissance, where secrecy, observation, and exploration intersect. Ultimately, the Arctic-Antarctic connection reframes our understanding of Earth's polar extremes. No longer can the poles be seen as isolated laboratories of climate science or extreme survival. Instead, they may represent linked environments, dynamic and structured, whose hidden networks influence one another through electromagnetic, geological, and hydrological systems. The visible surface, ice sheets, glaciers, and auroras, provides only partial insight. Beneath, patterns suggest coordinated activity, repeated structures, and anomalies that defy conventional explanation, hinting at intelligence, adaptive mechanisms, or planetary-scale environmental interactions. In conclusion, the evidence of parallels between Antarctic and Arctic anomalies suggests a world where hidden systems, subglacial structures, and unexplained phenomena are not confined to one pole, but may resonate across hemispheres. Public narratives emphasize isolation, environmental stewardship, and scientific discovery. Hidden realities reveal correlation, continuity, and potential connectivity between two of Earth's most extreme and enigmatic environments. The duality underscores the profound challenge of understanding the planet. What we see is only a fraction of what exists, and the hidden narrative, mirrored across poles, points to forces, structures, and possibly civilizations that operate beyond conventional human perception. Long before satellites, deep drilling, or modern exploration, humanity attempted to map the unknown. Ancient cartographers, scribes, and navigators produced maps that in some cases contained depictions of lands and coastlines inconsistent with known geography. Most historians dismiss these maps as speculative, mythological, or misinterpreted coastal surveys. Yet, for a growing number of researchers, certain details hint at a knowledge of Antarctica long before its official discovery. If these maps are taken at face value, they suggest that civilizations of the distant past may have been aware of, or even visited, parts of the continent now buried beneath ice. One of the most frequently cited examples is the Piri Reis map, produced in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer. The map displays a section of coastline that some argue corresponds to the northern edge of Antarctica, remarkably detailed for its time and supposedly drawn centuries before the continent was officially discovered. Skeptics attribute this to coincidence, misinterpretation, or coastal surveys of South America. However, proponents of the hidden Antarctica hypothesis note that the map's depiction of coastal contours aligns with subglacial topography, revealed by modern radar and satellite imaging, raising the tantalizing possibility of ancient knowledge of a continent now almost entirely concealed beneath ice. Another example appears in medieval European maps, often referred to collectively as Mappa Mundi. These maps sometimes include large southern lands described as frozen, inhospitable, or inhabited by mysterious peoples. The details vary, but in certain cases the shapes of these lands bear striking resemblance to Antarctica's continental outline. While mainstream historians attribute these representations to imagination, speculation, or theological symbolism, some researchers interpret them as echoes of first-hand knowledge passed down through generations. In this view, explorers, mariners, or a lost civilization may have recorded observations that survived only in symbolic or cartographic form. Even older references exist in non-Western texts. Chinese and Indian sources, for example, describe polar regions with extreme ice, subterranean rivers, and hidden lakes, details that align with modern scientific discoveries in Antarctica. Indigenous oral traditions, including those of the Arctic and subantarctic islands, contain stories of hidden lands, enormous ice masses, and mysterious inhabitants beneath the ice. At first glance, these tales seem mythological. When cross-referenced with geophysical data, however, they suggest awareness of environmental features that humans could not have easily observed without advanced technology, navigation skills, or long-distance exploration. The possibility of lost or forbidden knowledge complicates interpretation. Some theorists argue that ancient civilizations possessed capabilities far beyond what is typically credited, including seafaring, surveying, and possibly even early forms of aerial or satellite observation. Others propose that certain information was deliberately obscured, either to protect sacred knowledge, prevent the exploitation of resources, or conceal the existence of hidden societies. Across time, maps, texts, and oral traditions may represent fragments of a broader secret understanding of Earth's polar regions, knowledge systematically filtered, misinterpreted, or suppressed by dominant civilizations. Thematic consistencies across disparate sources are striking. Descriptions of frozen expanses, subglacial lakes, navigable channels, and hidden anomalies recur in maps separated by centuries and continents. These recurring motifs suggest that Antarctica's hidden interior was not entirely unknown to early human societies, even if it was largely inaccessible. The contrast framing is particularly compelling. While official history credits the continent's discovery to European explorers in the early 19th century, the hidden narrative implies awareness and even visitation long before that, with details preserved only in obscure or encoded forms. Some maps and texts even allude to potential dangers associated with these southern lands. Annotations describe treacherous ice, unpredictable weather, and magnetic disturbances, or lands that consume the unwary traveler. These warnings resonate eerily with modern accounts of disappearances, anomalous electromagnetic fields, and dangerous subglacial terrain. The possibility emerges that ancient observers not only mapped the continent, but also recognized its hidden hazards, documenting them symbolically or cryptically to convey both knowledge and caution to future generations. Historical speculation sometimes intersects with myth and legend. References to lost civilizations, advanced societies, or subterranean kingdoms beneath ice or mountains appear in numerous cultures. Plato's Atlantis, for example, is sometimes reinterpreted in this context, not as a literal lost island in the Mediterranean, but as a metaphor or distorted memory of advanced societies in polar regions. Similarly, Norse sagas, Greek texts, and Middle Eastern manuscripts occasionally describe hidden worlds beneath ice, stone, or water, realms inaccessible to ordinary humans, yet populated or shaped by intelligence. While these sources are often mythologized, their consistency and alignment with geophysical anomalies suggest that they may encode fragmented historical truths. the suppression or erasure of ancient knowledge may have continued into modern times. Certain early Antarctic expeditions, such as those sponsored by Germany, the United States, and the Soviet Union, reportedly included restricted or secretive objectives. While publicly framed as scientific reconnaissance, some private notes, diaries, and classified reports hint at missions motivated by the desire to validate or recover ancient knowledge, map hidden formations, and investigate anomalous phenomena. The hidden narrative thus bridges millennia. The ancient maps and legends may be connected to modern scientific and exploratory efforts, forming a continuum of human curiosity, ambition, and danger. Interpretation remains contentious. Scholars caution against overreading maps or texts, noting the difficulty of correlating symbolic or distorted representations with precise geography. Yet the juxtaposition of ancient observations with modern scientific findings, satellite imagery, radar maps, subglacial lakes, and drilling anomalies, lends a surprising degree of plausibility to certain claims. Even if no definitive evidence confirms ancient visitation, the patterns suggest a persistent human fascination with Antarctica and a recurring recognition of its hidden interior as a place of mystery, power, and danger. Ultimately, these ancient maps and texts challenge conventional chronology. They suggest that human awareness of Antarctica may extend far beyond the 19th century expeditions credited with its discovery. The continent's hidden interior, subglacial lakes, channels, and potentially engineered structures may have been known, observed, or mythologized long before modern technology could penetrate the ice. Public history frames Antarctica as unknown and barren until modern exploration. The hidden narrative implies continuity, secrecy, and a knowledge preserved, distorted, or concealed across generations. In conclusion, ancient maps and forbidden knowledge provide a critical lens through which to view Antarctica's hidden society. By correlating historical cartography, oral traditions, and myth with modern geophysical anomalies, researchers identify patterns that challenge conventional understanding. Official history celebrates discovery, climate research, and heroism in the face of extreme conditions. Hidden histories hint at prior awareness, concealed hazards, and possibly even direct contact with subglacial features. The duality underscores a central theme. Antarctica is not merely a frozen wilderness waiting to be explored, but a layered repository of knowledge, ancient hidden, and for reasons still unclear, selectively revealed to those willing or able to look beneath the ice. Antarctica has long been portrayed as a realm of extreme cold, isolation, and environmental danger. Official narratives of expeditions emphasize bravery, endurance, and scientific progress, framing the continent as a stage for human triumph over nature. Yet beneath the ice, a darker pattern emerges, one that official reports often omit or downplay: unexplained disappearances, accidents with no clear cause, and phenomena that defy conventional explanation. When analyzed through the lens of a hidden society or dynamic subglacial network, these incidents suggest that the continent is not merely dangerous, but actively resistant to intrusion, responding in ways that are difficult to anticipate, control, or understand. Historical accounts reveal some of the earliest mysteries. During early 20th century expeditions, teams regularly reported sudden compass malfunctions, magnetic anomalies, and strange atmospheric effects. Explorers like Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton noted inexplicable ice formations, sudden storms, and even optical phenomena that could not be rationalized by prevailing meteorology. While official reports attribute losses to weather, exhaustion, or navigational error, some researchers suggest that these incidents were influenced by hidden environmental forces, potentially those generated by subglacial networks or a concealed civilization beneath the ice. These forces, subtle yet formidable, may have shaped the paths of explorers long before modern drilling and satellite reconnaissance revealed the continent's secrets. The mid-20th century brought a surge of interest in Antarctic exploration, accompanied by an increase in documented anomalies and disappearances. Operation High Jump, the massive U.S. Navy expedition of 1946-1947, encountered multiple reports of unexplained lights, radar distortions, and sudden equipment failures. Crew members described phenomena that resembled artificial structures or active systems beneath the ice. While mainstream interpretations attributed these events to technical malfunctions or atmospheric mirages, the incidents fueled speculation that Antarctica might host unknown forces or networks capable of influencing surface operations. Some theorists even suggest that high jump's secrecy stemmed not only from Cold War strategy, but from encounters with features or entities deliberately concealed by the ice itself. Disappearance cases continued in the latter half of the century. Researchers and adventurers venturing into subglacial lakes or remote ice channels sometimes vanished without trace. Modern explorers report that GPS systems, communications equipment, and even radar instruments occasionally fail or provide contradictory readings in specific areas, complicating search and rescue efforts. In several documented cases, teams approaching anomalous subglacial formations were forced to retreat after sudden environmental changes, unexpected floods, ice collapses, or temperature spikes. While these events are officially labeled accidents, the patterns suggest a selective hazard, a response calibrated to human intrusion, whether intentional, environmental, or engineered. Technological anomalies frequently accompany these disappearances. Instruments fail in specific zones, electromagnetic interference prevents communication, and thermal readings fluctuate without discernible cause. Researchers note that these effects often correspond with previously mapped subglacial features, straight channels, domed depressions, or interconnected lakes. The convergence of disappearance reports with technological anomalies strengthens the argument that the continent's hidden networks may be active and responsive, affecting both human and mechanical activity. The contrast is stark. Publicly, these are unfortunate accidents or equipment failures. In the hidden narrative, they are interactions with a system designed to remain concealed or protected. Aerial and satellite surveys have occasionally captured fleeting evidence of anomalies linked to disappearances. Observers report sudden thermal signatures, unexpected depressions, or fleeting light phenomena coinciding with missing teams or malfunctioning equipment. These transient observations often vanish by the time ground teams arrive, leaving little to document beyond radar traces or sensor logs. Some researchers interpret this as deliberate concealment by natural or engineered systems, reinforcing the notion that the continent itself may resist human mapping, intrusion, or analysis. The visible landscape, the endless ice sheets and rolling glaciers, may only hint at a far more complex and potentially interactive subterranean environment. Historical continuity adds weight to these claims. Reports of unexplained disappearances from early explorers, mid-century expeditions, and modern teams share recurring characteristics: navigational confusion, instrument malfunction, sudden environmental shifts, and proximity to subglacial anomalies. The repetition of these patterns across decades and technologies suggests more than coincidence. While mainstream science favors natural explanations, extreme weather, ice instability, human error, the hidden narrative frames Antarctica as a dynamic environment shaped by forces that can selectively influence explorers, machinery, and observation. Human psychology may also play a role in interpreting disappearances. The extreme isolation, sensory deprivation, and environmental monotony of Antarctic missions can produce disorientation, hallucination, and cognitive stress. Official reports often cite these factors to explain disappearances or anomalies. Yet, when multiple teams report similar experiences in precisely the same regions, independent of environmental conditions or personnel, the probability of purely psychological causation diminishes. The convergence of human accounts with electromagnetic, thermal, and structural anomalies strengthens the argument for a hidden system influencing human activity. The hidden civilization hypothesis offers a provocative framework for understanding these events. If intelligent life, human, post-human, or otherwise, exists beneath the ice, disappearances may reflect deliberate avoidance, protective measures, or controlled interaction. Subglacial networks could be equipped with environmental regulation systems capable of influencing ice stability, magnetic fields, or thermal gradients. Equipment failures, sudden floods, or anomalous signals could serve as indirect warnings, obstacles, or deterrents to surface intrusion. From this perspective, Antarctica is not simply a dangerous place, it is a reactive, controlled environment, maintaining its secrecy through mechanisms that human explorers experience as accidents or misfortune. Modern disappearances continue to defy explanation. Teams using autonomous submersibles, drones, and ice-penetrating vehicles report sudden loss of control, navigational errors, or system shutdowns when approaching anomalous formations. Even advanced satellite monitoring cannot fully predict or prevent these incidents. Some theorists argue that the continent's hidden networks are capable of adaptive response, interacting with exploration technology in real time. These events blur the boundary between natural hazard and intentional intervention, raising the possibility that Antarctica is not only physically formidable but strategically intelligent in its concealment. In summary, mysterious disappearances and unsolved incidents reveal a dimension of Antarctica largely absent from official narratives. Surface-level hazards, storms, crevasses, and extreme cold are only part of the story. Beneath the ice lie structural anomalies, electromagnetic fields, and thermal irregularities that appear to interact selectively with explorers and technology. Historical patterns, technological malfunctions, and recurrent disappearances collectively suggest that the continent may host reactive systems or hidden inhabitants capable of influencing human activity while remaining largely undetectable. The duality persists publicly. Antarctica is a frontier of heroic exploration and scientific study, hidden beneath its frozen exterior. It is a dynamic, structured, and potentially conscious environment, guarding secrets through disappearance, anomaly, and resistance. If Antarctica conceals a hidden society beneath its ice, one of the most compelling questions is why. What purpose would such a civilization serve, and how could it remain undetected for millennia? Scholars, theorists, and explorers have offered multiple explanations, ranging from environmental adaptation to advanced scientific experimentation, from planetary guardianship to a relic of a lost human or pre-human culture. Official history does not acknowledge such possibilities. The continent is publicly portrayed as a frozen laboratory for climate science and geopolitical interest. The hidden narrative, however, suggests a deliberate, intentional concealment, a society operating within and beneath the ice, with objectives that may intersect, resist, or surpass human understanding. One hypothesis centers on environmental stewardship. A hidden Antarctic society, whether biological, technological, or hybrid, could function as a regulator of the continent's ecosystems. Subglacial lakes, channels, and magnetic anomalies may be part of a complex network that stabilizes ice flows, monitors geological activity, and regulates hydrological cycles. Evidence supporting this view comes from persistent thermal and electromagnetic anomalies that appear to influence ice stability and water movement. If true, the society's purpose may be fundamentally protective, maintaining equilibrium within a harsh and extreme environment that is crucial to the global climate system. This framing contrasts sharply with human activity, which often disrupts or exploits natural systems rather than preserving them. Another line of theorization emphasizes historical continuity. Some researchers argue that Antarctica may host remnants of a lost human civilization or a technologically advanced predecessor. This theory draws on ancient maps, mythological references, and archaeological hints from regions now submerged or ice-covered. If such a civilization existed, the continent could represent a repository of knowledge, technology, and infrastructure intentionally hidden to survive geological or climatic upheavals. The hidden society, in this view, is not merely living under the ice, but actively preserving its own legacy, waiting for conditions or civilizations capable of understanding or respecting it. The contrast is profound. Human history credits discovery to 19th and 20th century explorers, while hidden evidence suggests continuity, foresight, and preservation spanning millennia. Energy and resource management provides a third hypothesis. Subglacial lakes, channels, and mineral deposits could serve as energy conduits or storage facilities, harnessing geothermal, magnetic, or hydrological forces. An intelligent society might utilize these systems to sustain life, power machinery, or manipulate environmental conditions. Some unexplained phenomena observed in drilling programs and satellite surveillance, thermal spikes, electromagnetic pulses, and structural anomalies, could reflect such energy management. While mainstream science interprets these effects as artifacts or natural irregularities, the hidden narrative frames them as deliberate activity, hinting at objectives aligned with survival, self-sufficiency, or strategic advantage. Defense and concealment are also central themes. Historical disappearances, technological anomalies, and environmental hazards suggest that the hidden society may actively protect itself from intrusion. Sudden ice collapses, navigation disruptions, and localized electromagnetic interference could be interpreted as defensive measures rather than natural accidents. The continent's extreme climate and isolation naturally reinforce this concealment, but active systems may enhance it, making Antarctica virtually impenetrable to casual exploration. In this light, the society's purpose is not only preservation of knowledge or life, but also the strategic concealment of capabilities, infrastructure, and potentially transformative technologies from the outside world. Cultural and spiritual dimensions further complicate understanding. Ancient myths, oral traditions, and cryptic texts describe hidden worlds beneath ice or mountains, often associated with sacred knowledge or supernatural guardianship. If these stories have a historical basis, the hidden society may view its existence as intertwined with human morality, cosmic balance, or planetary stewardship. Subglacial formations could be ceremonial or symbolic as much as functional, with architecture, energy systems, and environmental management reflecting cultural values that prioritize secrecy, protection, and equilibrium. In this interpretation, the society's purpose is multidimensional, ecological, technological, strategic, and philosophical, integrating practical survival with ethical or cosmological principles. Time and evolution are essential to understanding potential purpose. A hidden Antarctic society would need to operate across geological and climatic epochs, adapting to ice expansion, glacial movement, and global environmental shifts. Such longevity implies sophisticated planning, infrastructure resilience, and a capacity to monitor and respond to surface civilizations without direct engagement. Modern explorers, drilling teams, and satellite observations may perceive only fragments of this activity, while the society's full operations remain largely invisible. The contrast is stark. Human timescales are brief, incremental, and linear, whereas the hidden society operates across millennia, strategically aligned with environmental and planetary cycles rather than immediate human objectives. Another intriguing hypothesis is communication or observation. Subglacial networks may function as a global sensor array, monitoring planetary conditions, electromagnetic fluctuations, and even biological activity. Electromagnetic anomalies, thermal shifts, and environmental responses could represent data collection, internal signaling or external monitoring. From this perspective, the hidden society is not isolated but deeply integrated into planetary systems, interacting indirectly with human exploration through subtle feedback loops. Such a role would position Antarctica as a hub of surveillance, understanding, and control, not for conquest, but for observation, adaptation, and the preservation of ecological and structural integrity. Finally, existential considerations cannot be ignored. If the hidden society possesses intelligence or capability beyond current human comprehension, its purpose may be fundamentally opaque, designed to operate according to principles inaccessible to our perception. Actions interpreted as anomalies, disappearances, or environmental hazards could be deliberate yet inscrutable, protective or experimental. Humans may only perceive a fraction of the society's objectives, interpreting complex and intentional systems as random or mysterious. This duality reinforces a key theme. Official narratives provide a simplified linear story of discovery, while hidden reality encompasses depth, strategy, and intelligence that challenges human expectations and understanding. In conclusion, theories of purpose and origin reveal the profound uncertainty surrounding Antarctica's hidden society. Possibilities range from ecological stewardship and historical preservation to energy management, defensive concealment, cultural continuity, planetary observation, and existential complexity. Each hypothesis aligns with observed anomalies, historical accounts, and modern technological data, while remaining speculative given the inherent inaccessibility of the subglacial environment. The contrast remains central. Publicly, Antarctica is a frontier for science, exploration, and geopolitical strategy. Beneath the ice, it may be a dynamic, intelligent, and enduring system, a society operating on timescales, principles, and purposes largely beyond human understanding. As exploration continues, each new discovery, anomaly, and observation deepens the mystery, suggesting that Antarctica is far more than a frozen wilderness. It is a repository of hidden knowledge, a guardian of secrets, and potentially one of the planet's most enigmatic civilizations. The search for evidence of a hidden society beneath Antarctica is fraught with challenges, contradictions, and tantalizing anomalies. Unlike more accessible archaeological sites, the continent's ice sheet conceals everything, forcing researchers to rely on indirect methods, satellite imagery, ice-penetrating radar, thermal mapping, seismic surveys, electromagnetic studies, and historical records. Each data set on its own may appear inconclusive, yet when combined, patterns emerge, subtle, complex, and often inexplicable. Official narratives consistently frame these anomalies as natural or coincidental, but a careful synthesis suggests a hidden reality, one that aligns with accounts of subglacial structures, unexplained phenomena, and ancient knowledge. Ice-penetrating radar is perhaps the most direct tool for revealing hidden features. Modern radar surveys have mapped extensive networks of subglacial lakes, channels, ridges, and domed formations. Many of these features appear geometric or systematically organized in ways difficult to reconcile with glacial dynamics alone. Straight channels stretch for kilometers, intersecting lakes at right angles, while certain domed depressions cluster in patterns that suggest intentional design. Researchers note that these formations correspond with previously observed anomalies in thermal readings and electromagnetic activity, reinforcing the notion of structured, potentially intelligent subglacial systems. Official explanations attribute these features to ice flow, erosion, or sedimentary processes, yet the regularity and recurrence of patterns remain difficult to dismiss. Satellite imagery provides complementary evidence. Multispectral, thermal, and radar-based imaging reveals irregular depressions, linear formations, and localized hotspots that are inconsistent with expected ice behavior. Certain anomalies appear to shift slightly over time, indicating dynamic processes beneath the ice surface. High-resolution optical images occasionally capture reflective or crystalline features that vanish when approached on the ground, hinting at hidden cavities, structures, or subglacial materials. Cross-referencing satellite data with seismic surveys and drilling logs creates a multidimensional view of the hidden landscape, revealing correlations that are unlikely to occur randomly. Electromagnetic studies add another layer of complexity. Persistent localized spikes, pulsed signals, and magnetic distortions occur in regions corresponding to mapped subglacial features. These anomalies defy straightforward interpretation. While solar activity, geomagnetic flux, and ice conductivity can account for some readings, many of the observed patterns are too coherent, localized, or temporally correlated with exploration activities to be dismissed as purely natural. Instruments often fail, deviate, or produce irregular outputs near these zones, suggesting active interference or complex environmental properties. In some cases, thermal anomalies coincide with electromagnetic spikes, further hinting at subglacial processes or phenomena beyond current scientific understanding. Seismic studies and drilling projects provide additional, if indirect, evidence. Drillers have encountered unexpected cavities, unusual ice density layers, and anomalous subglacial water flows. Certain boreholes reveal temperature fluctuations inconsistent with surface conditions, suggesting the presence of geothermal activity, flowing water, or artificial structures. Seismic surveys, meanwhile, detect cavities or dense structures beneath kilometers of ice, corresponding to locations flagged by radar. And electromagnetic surveys, the convergence of independent methodologies, radar, satellites, seismic studies, and drilling logs, strengthens the argument for non-random structures, even if the nature of these formations remains ambiguous. Historical and anecdotal evidence supplements scientific findings. Accounts from early explorers, mid-century expeditions, and modern drilling teams frequently describe anomalies that defy conventional explanation: sudden magnetic shifts, navigational failures, unexpected ice collapse, fleeting light phenomena, and mysterious equipment malfunctions. While each individual report may appear anecdotal or subjective, the consistency across decades and technologies suggests a persistent phenomenon. When mapped against known subglacial features, these observations often align with radar and satellite anomalies, reinforcing the possibility of a structured reactive system beneath the ice. Ancient maps, legends, and mythological references provide a cultural dimension to the evidence. Cartographic depictions of southern lands, oral traditions of hidden realms beneath ice or mountains, and cryptic texts describing extreme polar conditions may encode fragments of real observation. While these sources are often symbolic or metaphorical, their correlations with modern geophysical findings are striking. They suggest that human awareness of Antarctica, or at least its unique features, may extend far beyond the officially recognized timeline of discovery, hinting at preserved knowledge or experience that survived through selective documentation. Drilling into subglacial lakes has revealed unusual biological signature, microbial communities, extremophiles, and unique chemical compositions indicate environments capable of sustaining life in conditions previously considered inhospitable. Some studies suggest isolated ecosystems that have evolved independently for millions of years. While these discoveries do not prove the existence of an intelligent hidden society, they demonstrate that Antarctica's hidden environments are active, complex, and potentially habitable, reinforcing the plausibility of sustained human or post-human presence in the geological past or present. Geophysical anomalies, when considered together, form patterns that challenge conventional interpretation. Linear features, domed clusters, thermal hotspots, electromagnetic spikes, and unexplained cavities appear with regularity across vast areas of the continent. Individually, each anomaly could be dismissed as natural or coincidental. Collectively, they suggest organization, connectivity, or purpose. This is the foundation of the hidden society hypothesis, that multiple independent data sets, spanning decades of observation and a variety of methodologies, converge on a picture of Antarctica that is structured, dynamic, and partially concealed from human understanding. Modern reconstructions using 3D modeling and computer simulations enhance the evidence. By integrating radar, satellite, seismic, and thermal data, researchers can create detailed models of subglacial features, revealing patterns and connections invisible in two-dimensional maps. These reconstructions highlight recurring geometries, aligned depressions, and interconnected channels consistent with functional or engineered networks. Even if natural processes could theoretically produce some patterns, the frequency, consistency, and correlation with electromagnetic and thermal anomalies suggest an underlying logic that goes beyond chance. Finally, international scientific and strategic attention reinforces the importance of anomalies. Multiple nations maintain classified research programs, secretive drilling operations, and satellite surveillance in Antarctica, often justified publicly as climate monitoring or geological study. Privately, the concentration of effort in regions with persistent anomalies suggests recognition of unexplained or potentially valuable phenomena. While evidence remains indirect, the intensity and secrecy of research hint at recognition at the institutional level that Antarctica harbors features or systems that are extraordinary, unexplained, and potentially consequential. In summary, evidence for a hidden Antarctic society spans multiple domains: geophysical anomalies, satellite imagery, seismic and drilling observations, electromagnetic readings, thermal variations, microbial studies, historical accounts, and ancient maps. Each line of evidence alone may be subject to alternative interpretations, yet the convergence of data forms a compelling mosaic, one of structured dynamism and mystery beneath the ice. Public narratives emphasize science, exploration, and environmental stewardship. Hidden evidence points to networks, formations, and phenomena that defy conventional explanation, suggesting a reality far more intricate, active, and enigmatic than human eyes typically perceive. Antarctica, therefore, stands as both a frontier of discovery and a keeper of profound secrets, where every anomaly, observation, and unexplained phenomenon may represent a fragment of a hidden society patiently enduring beneath the ice.